Hello from Silicon Valley. My name is Carlos, and I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. I want to welcome you to Virtual Product Summit. This is the largest online product management conference in the world. Today, we're being joined by over 10,000 people from different parts of the world. So please feel free to put in the comments where you're connecting from, and I'll do my best to give you a shout out throughout the day. Get ready to learn and be inspired by some of the best product managers working at top companies such as Facebook, Netflix, and eBay. Just a few points of information before we get started. About social media, we're going to be sharing highlights on all the channels such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our account name is Product School, so feel free to follow us. If you also want to share your own highlights, please do so. And it would be nice if you can add the hashtag Product Summit and also the hashtag Product Management. This way, you'll get additional exposure, especially for people who are not following this conference yet. And by the way, just to make things more interesting, we're going to be raffling a free ticket to attend any ProductCon conference this year, fully paid. So the more you comment, the more you post on social media, the more chances you'll have to win. We're also going to be using Slido.com. This is a website we use to gather feedback on our conference in order to improve for the future. So feel free to go there, slido.com, and type VPS. You'll get access to a list of all the different speakers, and you'll be able to just quickly rate what you thought about each of the talks. I want to talk about the future of product management in a second. But before that, let me share a quick story about how Product School began. Well, this is me, almost 6 years ago in Silicon Valley. As you can tell, the beginnings weren't very fancy. And a lot of people ask me what inspired me to start Product School. My answer is very simple. I wish I had something like this when I was starting my career. I studied computer science, and my background is in software engineering. The problem is, when you study computer science or any other technical degree, there are not that many options if you don't want to do anything technical. I soon realized that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life coding. The problem is, I was supposed to continue my career as an engineer, then as a software engineer, then maybe as a principal engineer, but what if I want to leverage my technical background in a different capacity? What if I want to start a company? What if I want to participate in building a software product, collaborating with other stakeholders and not just with engineers? Well, that wasn't really that clear back in the day. So I decided to go to business school. I started business in University of California, Berkeley, and I learned two big things. First of all, there are so many other people like myself that had a technical background and were thinking business, which was very refreshing. But the second thing is that there were so many other people from a more traditional business background, such as consulting, investment banking, marketing, and so on, that also wanted to be in tech, also wanted to participate in building products, but they were feeling very intimidated because they didn't have that traditional engineering degree. So after spending so many years working as an engineer, then as a product manager, then as a founder and CEO, and learning so much stuff on the go, I realized that really none of that was really being taught in an engineering school or in a business school. And that's really what inspired me to build that bridge and create a product school right in between engineering and business. Something super practical, super efficient that anyone who wants to either become a product manager or continue growing their career as a product leader can do. And this is something that can happen on weeknights or weekends without putting your life on hold. Moreover, all of the product leaders who teach at Product School are real product leaders who are keeping their full-time jobs at top companies such as Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Airbnb, Uber, and so on. So, after almost 6 years building Product School, we also started offering training for corporations. So now we also have the opportunity to go inside big companies and help them level up their product teams. Right now, the community is over 1 million users, and we produce over 1,000 events in different cities around the world, over 200, plus online. We do the same when we deliver our trainings. We have 10 physical locations where we deliver live training, and we also have an online campus where we can deliver the same type of training, but live online. And we produce 7 conferences per year. One of them is Virtual Product Summit. So we do Virtual Product Summit twice a year, and we produce 5 in-person conferences called ProductCon in San Francisco, New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, and London. Now let's talk about the future. What does the future hold for us as product managers and for our industry? Let me tell you, the future has never been brighter. And why do I say that? This year, we launched the first annual report on the future of product management, and we surveyed over 1,000 product leaders within our community. We wanted to gather data on where the biggest opportunities are for us as a profession. So first things first, you'll be able to get the full report for free. In this presentation, I just want to quickly highlight some of the biggest learnings. So first things is, where do product managers come from? And United States seems to be the first country in terms of product management opportunities, but that's definitely not the only one. I'm very pleased to see the growth of product management in South America, in countries such as Mexico or Brazil. Product management is also growing very strong in Europe, in the United Kingdom, Germany, or France. Nigeria is the #1 hub in terms of product management opportunities for Africa. India is obviously huge, and Singapore and Indonesia seem to be growing very, very fast for Southeast Asia. So first thing that we learned in this report was what makes product managers tick. What is it that really wants to make them continue building products within the same organization? And we all know the concept of product market fit. But before that, it's really important to make sure that there is culture fit between the product person and the actual company or product that they're trying to build. Why? Well, we're in a very hot market. There's so many opportunities out there, and it's not hard for a product manager to get pinged by different recruiters. So what really makes them tick and want to continue thriving is really feel identified with the mission of the organization. At the end of the day, nobody's really going to believe more in the product than the product manager. So you really want to inspire engineers, designers, business people, and everyone who's involved in building this product. You really want that product manager to believe in the mission and be excited about the challenge ahead. So this is probably not the most impressive data point, but it's definitely refreshing to confirm that before product market fit, we need to care about culture fit. So product management seems to be in very high demand. And why is that? Well, we actually realized that over 75% of the companies surveyed in this report confirmed that they were going to hire at least one product manager within the next 12 months. And this makes sense because the more products out there, not just external products, but internal products, the more need there is for someone to coordinate all these different efforts. And product management goes beyond tech. This is not just something for high-tech companies that need something very specific. Any company with more than one employee needs some sort of software to coordinate their efforts and optimize their processes. So in order to do that, at some point you're going to need a product manager. Moreover, most of these companies will also have an external product where they display the products or services that they offer. In some cases, they will also use those websites or mobile apps to sell those products or services and even deliver those products or services. So product management is definitely here to stay. And we always talk about how hard or how interesting it is to break into product management. But what happens after that? Is this really a good career move? Well, data seems to confirm that it seems so, because PMs are happy, and over 75% confirmed that they really wanted to continue working in product for the next 5 years. Well, why is that? And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and ask more qualifying questions to some of these people who participated, and some of the answers that they gave us were that they have access to opportunity. They can influence not only the product that they're working on, but the overall strategy of the company. And feeling empowered is really, really important for us. And we also want to understand a little bit more about our career opportunities within product. If we assume that, okay, breaking into product management is a good thing and we are going to be happy, we also want to make sure that we are being rewarded for the value that we are adding. And now there is much more appreciation and definition around the career path for product managers. Product management seems to be the entry point, and then we see product leaders who are managers of managers. At some point, as a product manager, you will also want to influence a portfolio of products. You will also want to empower and help the next generation of product managers, and you will become more of a people manager than an actual product manager, which is a great thing. And eventually, these product leaders will turn into product executives. We see the rise of the chief product officer role. Product is not just a marketing function or an engineering function, it's its own dedicated function. Chief product officers can report to the CEO directly, and we can see now there is much more structure around how to go from product manager all the way up to VP of product or Chief Product Officer. But how do you do that? Well, it's definitely not something that you are going to achieve just by whatever you studied in college. This is lifelong learning. You have to obviously learn a lot of these things on the job, but you can also learn many other things by getting mentors or by just going to taking other types of training. We broke this down into two different categories: hard skills and soft skills. To be honest with you, when I saw soft skills, I wasn't really impressed or surprised because leadership, communication, and creative thinking is something that it's expected from managers, not just product managers. However, when I looked at the hard skills chart, I was very happy to see that there is appreciation for learning artificial intelligence, data, and UX design. Data and artificial intelligence are really critical for any product manager. These days, we all agree that building products is not about having great ideas, it's about really learning from your users and making calculated and short decisions to iterate on your product fast. And that can only be done by looking at data and really understanding what your users do and want. And the third point, UX design is really critical as well, because we often talk about how engineers break into product management or how business people break into product management, but UX design seems to be that missing piece that we should actually have more of those designers breaking into product. And it's going to become more and more relevant for anyone, doesn't matter your background, to develop an eye for design and really care about the user experience and how products look like, not just B2C products, but also enterprise level products. So what's the future of this? PMs are here to stay. It's very good to see that most of us, over 85% of the people surveyed, confirm that product management is going to stay very relevant 10 years from now. And I tend to agree with that. Honestly, it doesn't really matter if the name changes. What's really important is to understand that the more specialists we have within an organization, the more engineers, designers, data people, whatever it is, the bigger the need to have people in the middle as generalists that are coordinating the efforts and really putting the vision in front of everyone so we can all push in the same direction. At the end of the day, product managers love big challenges. And I think it's very important to close these thoughts by confirming that. It's not just about optimizing a feature or doing small things that don't seem to make an impact in the world. Actually, biggest problems matter. And for us as product managers, we have a big responsibility to try to pick industries or products that can make a huge impact in the world. And it was really good to confirm this hypothesis based on data, knowing that transportation, health, agriculture, or water are the top challenges picked by PMs to spend their time working on. As I said at the beginning, this was just a quick highlight of all the different data points that we gather in this report. If you are interested in getting the full copy, you can do it for free by just going to futureofproductmanagement.com, or you can scan this QR code and you will get a copy directly on your email. So without any further ado, I'd love for the first speaker to start.
Hello, my name is Maureen Keating, and I'm here to talk to you about the differences between product management and product marketing so that you'll be able to answer the question, how will you advocate for the customer? First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've had both product management and product marketing roles at very large companies like Apple, Adobe, Hewlett-Packard, and experiential marketing roles for the Napa Valley Film Festival, where I worked with brands like Cadillac and Sony and Decor and Diageo Wines. I've also held product marketing roles at Cisco, City College of San Francisco, and product management roles at LiveScribe and Blurb. So that puts me in a pretty unique position to be able to talk to you in very practical terms about what it takes to do product management and product marketing at these large companies. So the primary difference between the two roles is that with product management, you're really focused on the customer and how they will use the product. So you're really very internally focused on developing requirements for the customer and understanding what the user needs are in relation to how they will use the product. As opposed to product marketing, which is really focused on external communications and who your target audience is, what drives them to discover the product, and how they will use the product and continue to use the product over time. We'll go into a lot more detail about this, though. What you'll find in both roles is that you'll be an advocate for the customer. So in both cases, you'll be working very closely with user research and looking at third-party research to understand how customers approach your product, what their considerations are, and what's driving them to use your product. Secondly, you'll be developing personas and use cases to better understand those customers. But I'll talk a little bit about how you'll be using those personas and use cases differently as you approach the product development process. Third, both of the roles are driven by the software development lifecycle. So the product manager is driving the product development process all the way from planning for the product all the way through the launch, whereas the product marketing manager is really shepherding the feature set and the requirements all the way through the process, but really focused more on developing the right target audience, understanding, as well as messaging for the target audience that's determined, and working with people across the company to use data to better understand how to inform the messaging that's used for the product. Fourth is developing an understanding of a development methodology that governs the release cadence. So for example, in the Agile methodology, it's common for development teams to be putting out releases to customers on a monthly basis. But the marketing organization may not be necessarily messaging those monthly releases. So that needs to be negotiated between marketing and product management. But that is sort of the central framework that governs the work processes of both roles. In addition, both roles are very KPI driven. So whereas the product management role will really be focusing on developing KPIs around downloads and product usage and updates of the product, the product marketing manager will be focusing on the effectiveness of the different marketing channels that are supporting the release and making sure that those marketing channels are focusing on the parts of the customer journey that need the most attention. And we'll get into the customer journey a little bit more as we talk about the product marketing role in depth. Both of the roles will also be evangelists for the product. So whereas the product manager will know in very great detail the motivations for the customer, the product marketing manager will also understand what the customer needs are. So both can be doing interviews and giving demos of the product at trade shows and in support of sales activities. Another thing that both of the roles will do is will be interacting with the marketing teams, whereas the product marketing manager will be focused on managing all of the marketing activities to ensure that they're meeting the objectives of the product and the messaging briefs. The product manager will be more of a spokesperson for the product and will be sort of the final arbiter of technical details with regard to marketing. And then both roles will also have the ability, or need to have the ability, to manage cross-functional teams. And this means the next point, which is influencing large groups of people across a matrixed organization without actually having direct responsibility for those folks. And then next will be competitive analysis. So for both product management and product marketing, it's very important to understand what the competitive landscape is. From a product management perspective, this is important because feature set and feature prioritization and the ability to pivot based on what your competitors are doing is critical for the success of your product. And from a product marketing perspective, understanding how your competitors are messaging against you or what they're messaging to your target audience is critical. Next, in both roles, you're driving to a product release. And so in general, this is something that's done on a quarterly basis, sometimes more frequently, sometimes less frequently. But since they're both tied to the product development cycle, it's very important to understand that the product release is the ultimate goal for these cycles that are going on. And then another area of overlap is setting the pricing for the product. So for example, the product managers are going to be interested in making sure that the cost to develop the product is allowing the company to make a profit. And the product marketing managers are going to be interested in making sure that revenue is optimized. And some of the KPIs that product marketing is responsible for are directly tied to pricing and revenue. And so pricing is important for both. And then lastly, regardless of whether you're product management or product marketing, people all throughout the organization are going to be looking to your teams as the definitive source for answers about what's going on with the product. So let's talk a little bit more about what's specific to product management. So with the product management, you have some key relationships. You're sort of a hub of information, as I mentioned before, and you have a few key stakeholders that are the most critical relationships for you. So first and foremost, it's the engineering team who's going to be carrying out the vision that the large group of people that you're working with is delivering. So they're a critical relationship. The project management organization is going to be managing the timeline and the resources and making sure that you're on schedule and coordinating with everyone else in the organization from an operational perspective. Of course, product marketing is also a key relationship since they're going to be developing the messaging for you. And then the product design team is also very important because as you're envisioning how new features and functionality will work in the product design team will be developing the user interactions and then working and collaborating with the engineering team to determine how that's going to be executed in the product. But other teams that you're going to work with would be your overall product organization, the user research team to help you to get the data to support the decisions that you're making as you go through the product development cycle, the product analytics team to help you to get that data from a quantitative perspective. Day-to-day, as I mentioned, is driven by the software development lifecycle and also the development methodology. So the way that you interact with these teams is going to differ based on the fact that you're either in an agile methodology, a lean methodology, or a waterfall process. And so in a waterfall process, your cadence of delivery is going to be much less frequent, and so it will change the nature of the relationship. And then the other thing that's a key difference with product management is the orientation to the customer. And so as I mentioned before, there's persona development and use case development, but it's really going to be focused on how the customer moves through the product, not necessarily how they discover the product and whether or not they continue to use the product over time. Now we're going to talk a little bit about product marketing in depth. So you'll see a similar chart here for product marketing and the key relationships that the product marketing organization has. And I've highlighted a few different, it's really a different layout than product management. So you have your campaigns team. Campaign is really the engine that drives all of the marketing that's happening at the company. And they're really the hub that connects you to all of the centers of excellence. And you can see that's another spoke on this wheel. Product management, of course, is another key relationship because they're going to be helping you to do things like defining what the feature set is and making sure that you have the right visuals and language to describe what each of the features does. The operations team is going to help to make sure that everything is on time and that all of the schedules are coordinated not only with the product team, but also with the marketing and all of the other pieces of your company that are affected by the launch. And then, of course, the creative teams that are writing copy and executing your messaging, they often function sort of like your engineering team does from a product management perspective, because you'll be defining the messaging and the go-to-market strategy, but other people will be executing on the plan and how that actually rolls out. So on the day-to-day basis, the product marketing organization is also driven by the product management and software development lifecycle, but there's also marketing events. And so product marketing tends to be more focused on moments in time that will be opportune to talk about the product and introduce it to the public, to the proper target audience. Also, there's a much larger focus in product marketing on driving revenue. So there'll be sales enablement activities and also KPIs that are focused on determining which part of the product life cycle of a customer journey that is going to be most opportune for us to focus, for the team to focus their marketing efforts on. And then, of course, the orientation to the customer is via this customer journey that I've referenced several times. And this is really how customers will discover, try, use, how well they're retained within the product. In other words, keeping them using the product over time. And if you happen to lose them to competition, how you might win them back. So this is really quite a different way of looking at things than product management does, because you're really looking at this customer journey. And it's very important for the marketing organization to be aligned with that and understand where they need to focus their efforts. So a few other things to consider to directly compare product management versus product marketing. So product management, as I mentioned before, is internally focused on developing requirements. So most of a product manager's time is going to be focused on meetings inside the company, working through customer problems with the engineering and design teams, as well as their leadership. They're going to be synthesizing initiatives that are going on within the company and trying to make sure that they manifest within the product so that they can be understood by customers as part of a set, or and understand logically where things fit together within the product scheme of a company. For product marketing, they're really more externally focused on messaging and strategy. So as I mentioned before, it's about assessing a target audience and making sure that all of the messaging and all of the materials and the marketing channels are optimized for that target audience for a release. When it comes to product management, the work is really focused on prioritizing a backlog in an agile methodology. And in agile, you're going to be looking at use cases and user stories from the customer perspective. And so this is very detailed work, it's very structured, and it really drives the daily activities of the product manager. Whereas product marketing work is really focused on coordinating the efforts of the marketing organization. And so there are really no stand-up meetings. There's very little activity in software like Jira that's going to be driving an agile development process. And so on a day-to-day basis, the activities vary quite widely. The documents that are created by product management are generally referred to as PRDs. And in modern product management, we aren't actually writing the long product requirements documents that we used to write in the past. Most of that is really manifests itself in maybe a PowerPoint presentation that gives an overview of the epics that you might have in Agile, or you might even roll up your epics into a visual that would explain to people how all the different features go together. Whereas the product marketing organization is really focused on creating documents like go-to-market strategy and messaging briefs. So this would be interpreting the features of the release that have been decided by the product team and figuring out, like I said before, who the target audience is, what's the language and what's the research that the rest of the marketing organizations need to have in order to understand how to talk about the product and what those users in your target audience really care about. And also to help the marketing teams to understand for that target audience what the right mix of marketing is going to be. And so, for a particular release, if it's focused on the enterprise market, for example, and your target audience are chief marketing officers, you might not want to be using social media channels like Snapchat to get to them unless they're, very young CMOs, as opposed to maybe something like a LinkedIn strategy where you would use that form of social media to reach out to them in a very, very targeted campaign. Or maybe if you were going to have an event that was focused on high school students, you might want to focus on partnering with schools to do that, as opposed to something that's focused on small business, where you might be having events where you would have retreats for small business owners in a local area. So that kind of tuning and suggestion is what product marketing managers will focus on in their go-to-market strategy. So as I mentioned before, there are personas that are considered in both product management and product marketing. And in product management, the personas are really focused on understanding how a customer is going to approach solving a certain problem and how the product can help them to overcome that problem. And so personas might be, I think, focused on a type of a person, not necessarily the gender of a person. They would have a name, but the behavior of the persona would be focused on how they're using the product. Product marketing would probably take that same persona, but would be more focused on how the person is coming to the product, why they're attracted to the product, why they choose it versus the competition, and why they might move away from the product over time. And so really that funnel of use where product management is looking at people who are in the product as opposed to product marketing, which is focusing on how people come to the product and why they leave. The next thing I want to focus on is the day-to-day activities of product management versus product marketing. So as I mentioned before, in the Agile model, you're working on prioritizing backlogs, but also you're working directly with engineering and design and testing to adjust the feature set. So as you go through the product development cycle, if certain features are taking longer than others, you may have to reprioritize what's in the release, and that can be changing over time based on the test data that comes back. The day-to-day activities of product marketing are quite different, and what they would be focused on instead is the management of the voice of the product and the technical accuracy of product marketing. So product marketing, as you saw from the diagram before, interacts with more people across the organization, and it's not quite as rigid on a day-to-day basis as to what's being done. Both product management and product marketing focus on analytics, but analytics for product management really focus on product usage, downloads, and updates to the product, whereas analytics for product marketing are focused on the customer journey and launch KPIs. So this is really measuring the effectiveness of the marketing channels and making sure that the channels that are chosen from a marketing perspective are supporting generating revenue for the company. The salary is also a little bit different when it comes to product management and product marketing. Product managers generally start out at the entry level at a higher rate than product marketing does, but over time in your career, if you continue to move forward, those will level out. So while product management might start a little bit higher, they'll eventually get to the same place. And then lastly, the role of product management has been around for longer than product marketing. And so the role is more clearly defined because it has an active role in Agile and the product development process. Product marketing is outside of the marketing organization, which is very clearly defined, and is outside of product management. And as a newer discipline, it can sometimes be ambiguously defined, within an organization. So this is just something to be aware of. So in the end, if you're making the choice between the two, I hope that me going through the differences between the two roles and what they focus on has helped you to be able to make a decision, or at least to better understand what your product management or product marketing colleagues are doing. And that's about it. So let's stay connected. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, or I have 2 upcoming classes coming up in January through the product school. I'd love to continue the conversation with you offline. Thanks so much for your time.
I hope you're enjoying so far. I want to give a few shoutouts to people who are typing in the comments where they're connecting from. We have people connecting from Lagos, Nigeria, Madrid, Spain, Lisbon, Portugal, Sao Paulo, Brazil. We have people connecting from Dallas, Texas, Tokyo, Japan. This is incredible, just to name a few. So please continue mentioning the cities or countries where you're connecting from, and I'll continue giving you shoutouts throughout the day. And by the way, good news, we are being trending topic on Twitter right now. So please continue sharing your comments and your learnings using the hashtag Product Summit and Product Management. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I am Parul Goyal, and I'm going to talk about the power of building momentum. But first, a little bit about myself. I started my career in consulting. In consulting, I was a business analyst, and I helped several companies build their e-commerce website. For many of them, it was their first e-commerce site. And then I transitioned into product management. I've had the opportunity to build both consumer and enterprise products in the last few years. Right now, I am in enterprise product management at PayPal. I lead the payments team for our partners and marketplaces segment. What I really love is retrospecting, thinking about what I have done, what I could have done better, learning from these experiences and sharing them with others. So this talk that I am sharing with you today is also a synthesis of some of my past failures and successes. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. The power of building momentum. Building momentum is not something that we as PMs spend a lot of time thinking about, but we should, because it's an important skill. It's a skill that if we master can become our superpower. It can accelerate our careers, it can make our product successful. You might be wondering why. I will get to that, but first, what do I mean by building momentum? Think about a time when you had to build a fire. What was the hardest part? I guarantee you spent about 80% of your effort just getting the fire started. Once you had a flame going, even a tiny flame, growing it into a blazing, cheerful fire was much easier. And that's what I mean by building momentum. Being able to build a tiny flame. Being able to get the ball rolling. If you are kicking off a new initiative, or if you are working on a new product, can you get things started? Can you build that tiny flame? Because if you can, that significantly improves your chances of success. You might be wondering, really? Is that really true? Does momentum really matter that much? Let me ask you, would you rather be on a plane that's still at the gate? Or would you rather be on a plane that's on the runway about to take off? I'm guessing it's the latter. The same is true of people in your organization. They want to be part of initiatives that are going somewhere. And let's be honest, getting things started is hard. It's hard for everyone. But if you are able to overcome this difficulty, if you are able to show progress, if you are able to build momentum, you show potential. You inspire confidence. You demonstrate you are someone who can run with an idea. So if you build momentum, you will get more visibility. You will get the help you need. You will attract more attention to your initiatives. So then how do you do it? How do you build momentum? I'm going to share with you 3 strategies that have worked for me consistently. First one, get started. At the beginning of an initiative, you might not have all the information you need, or you might not have all the people you need. For example, you might think, oh, I will start documentation once I have all the requirements, or the initiative will really start once I have an engineering team allocated to me. But to build momentum, we have to do the exact opposite. Get started. Get started with what you have. Get started with small things, but get started. This is the most important strategy for building momentum. And this is why it works. 2 main reasons. Number 1, action creates traction. When you take action, when you are putting your energy, when you're putting your time into something, you are sending a strong signal that this is important. Then other people are likely to take it seriously. They're likely to help you with your initiative. I'll give you an example from my personal life. The house we live in, I and my husband, it gets very messy over the week because we are both busy. But by Friday evening, I'm kind of frustrated about it. And sometimes I complain to him like, oh, look at this. Look at the state of our house. We should really clean up. And he would be like, yeah, let's clean up. Let's do it over the weekend. And most of the time, we don't really do anything about it. But there are times when I get so frustrated, I don't even want to have a conversation about it. I just jump in and I start cleaning up. I start going through the mail on the dining table. I start tidying up. And then something magical happens. The door to my husband's home office opens. He comes out and he's like, oh, are we cleaning up? Let's clean up. And he joins in without me having to say or ask anything. That's the power of action. It inspires action. The second reason getting started is important is because action also brings clarity. It reveals what else needs to be done to us. So for example, I sometimes get into the trap of thinking, well, I will document requirements once I know everything. But it's only when I sit down to document, then I realize there are so many things I still need to find out. There are all these holes in my understanding. And what comes out of that exercise is a list of questions I need to pursue. Then I can identify who can help me with that information. So once I have this list of questions, then I'm reaching out to you, not with just a generic, can you please help me? I have a very specific ask. Can you please help me with these 3 questions? The more specific my ask, the better my chances of getting a response. So that's the second reason why getting started really helps. It reveals your next steps to you. So then how do you do it? How do you just get started when things are not clear? So these are my 3-step recommendations. Number 1, identify the next step. No matter where you are, what initiative it is, what product it is, there is always something that you can do to move it forward. Identify what it is. It could be doing a Google search. It could be setting up a meeting, sending an email. Find out what it is. Really think about it. And then, number 2, do it. Without waiting for anyone or anything, take that action. Choose progress over perfection. Once you do it, then think about, okay, what's my next step now? And then do that. Eventually, your next steps will reveal themselves. If you need help from other people, do number 3, engage others and ask for specific help. If you apply this first strategy of getting started, you will notice a ripple effect. You will notice that although you started alone, there are others who are joining you in your efforts. So that's my first strategy, get started. Number 2, celebrate small wins. When we have a big goal ahead of us, it's easy to get caught into all or nothing mindset. Even in the early stages of an initiative, even if we make a little bit of progress, it might seem insignificant compared to what we have ahead of us. So we tend to dismiss it. We tend to minimize it. We tend to focus on problems rather than progress. I was set in this mindset for many years. If you were to ask me, oh, Parul, how's your product going? You would have gotten a laundry list of everything that wasn't going right. Oh, there's so much demand, we can't keep up, we don't have enough resources, it's all so complex. A few years ago, I saw a great example of what to do instead. I was part of a project team that included engineers and UX designers. We were about to wrap up user testing and start development. And just at the last minute, we lost our engineering resources to a higher priority initiative. We were devastated. We were so disappointed. We were looking forward to our designs coming to life. At that point, no one would have blamed us for throwing in the towel. We tried our best. What could we do without engineers? It was our lead UX designer who said, you know what? We still have a PM. We still have UX designers. Why don't we just continue with user testing? So we did. Instead of 3 rounds of user testing, we did 5 rounds of user testing. We learned more about our customers. What do they need? How are our designs helping them? How can we make our designs better? So not only did we continue making progress, we also communicated this progress to our stakeholders, to our leadership, in formal and informal communication. We told them what we were learning. We told them what we were planning to do next. We also communicated that yes, we can't really go very far without engineers, but that by no means was the only message or even the main message. We kept it positive. A few weeks later, we got 2 engineers assigned to our initiative. And I can guarantee you that us keeping things positive, us showing progress, played a huge role in getting the support we need. So that's my second strategy I recommend to you. Celebrate small wins. Keep a positive outlook. Keep it for yourself, for your team, and for people around you. And this is why it works. You might have a team who's helping you with this effort, and they would really like to feel that it's going somewhere, they're having an impact, they're getting things done. When you celebrate successes, you are affirming them that yes, we are going in the right direction, we are having an impact. They will feel more energized, they will be more dedicated to your initiative. The second thing is for the people around you. They are taking clues from how you show up, from how you act. If you are always complaining about being stuck, that's what they would believe. Oh, this initiative or this product is always stuck. No matter how many resources we give them, no matter how much support we provide them, they can't seem to make progress. But if you communicate optimism, if you communicate progress, then they would want to help you. You would again inspire confidence. So how do you do it? These are my 3 steps. Number 1 is identify near-term milestones. If you want to lose 20 pounds, you're not going to lose it all together. You lose 1 pound at a time, maybe even half a pound at a time. So plan for those smaller milestones. And when you reach them, celebrate. Celebrate with the team who helped you. Acknowledge their contribution. Acknowledge the progress they have made. And finally, communicate your successes to people around you, your leaders, your stakeholders. Inspire confidence in them. By no means gloss over your problems. Of course, tell them what you need. Let them know that support that you need from them. But don't fuss about it. Don't make that the focus. Over-communicate success. Build a positive outlook. And my third strategy is to recruit influencers. A few years ago, I was trying to kick off a new track of work. And to me, the value prop was quite clear. It would help us sell more. It would help our sales team win more deals. But no matter what I tried, I couldn't have my message wouldn't resonate with our leadership. I must have had 5 versions of vision, strategy, roadmap decks that I tried, but nothing clicked. I was getting frustrated, and one day I was venting to my mentor, a mentor of mine, to say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. No matter how much I go to our leadership and tell them about this initiative, I'm not getting a response, nothing sticks. And she made a really good point. She said, Parul, everybody is trying to sell their product to our leadership, right? Their ears are probably tired from people telling them how great their product is, how it would change the world. Forget the leadership. You said your product would help the sales team. Spend time with sales team. Explain to them what you are doing and make them your advocate. Then they, instead of you, the sales team can go to the leadership and sell your message. And I had an epiphany. I was like, that makes so much sense. If you look at any successful movement, whether it's the suffrage movement or LGBTQ movement, they couldn't have been successful without allies. So at work, we need allies. Don't go at it yourself. Advocate an army of influencers and advocates to help you. And this is why it works. Number one, if there are other people advocating for your initiative, it adds credibility. Let's be honest, everyone's mom thinks that they are talented. And people don't really believe it when it's your mom who's saying that. But if it's your teacher, your peers who are saying, oh my gosh, this person is so talented, it gets more traction. So have other people advocate for you, and it will add to you and your initiative's credibility. The second thing is, the more people are talking about it, the more it highlights the need and urgency of what you're doing. Your leader might think, wow, this is the 5th person this week who has mentioned this initiative. It must be important. So how do you get an army of people to help you? Number one is think broad. In your company, what are some of the other groups who might benefit from your initiative or your product? Could be sales, could be risk, could be your customer service organization. So number one, identify who they are. Number two, spend time with them to understand what are they looking for, what are their needs, are there any synergies with what you are building? And if there are, go to number three, educate them, let them know what you are doing, let them know what you can use some help with, give them the tools to go out and advocate for you. So again, number three, my strategy number three, don't go at it by yourself. Recruit influencers and advocates to help you. To conclude, I want to share this quote with you from Abe Lincoln. Things may come to those who wait, but only the things left by those who hustle. We have a choice. We can either wait for things to happen, or we can make them happen for us. And that's really what building momentum is about. It's about taking charge. It's about hustling support. It's about getting things started and then getting them done. If you are someone who wants to build the superpower of building momentum, try these 3 strategies. Get started. Don't wait for anyone or anything. Start with what you have. Celebrate small wins. Boost the morale of your team and inspire confidence of those around you. And finally, recruit an army of advocates and influencers to help you. If you apply these 3 strategies consistently, you will be unstoppable. Thank you so much for watching. Please go to goyalparul.com to give me feedback and help me improve. Thank you.
I truly believe that in order to build a successful product, it is very important to build a community around it. And I'm very proud of the community we're building together at Product School and the amount of free, high quality resources that we have for you. From a podcast to ebooks to a jobs portal to online and in-person events. It's all about really helping people break into product management and continue growing in their product career. So if you want to check out some of those free resources, just go to the website that you can see on the screen or scan the QR code that you will see. And without any further ado, let's move on to the next speaker.
Hello and welcome. My title today is Product Analytics is Useless. And you may be looking at that title and thinking, that's a strange thing to say, especially coming from one of the founders of a product analytics company. And it is strange. But I'm going to try to convince you that it's not a strange thing to say. Why not? Well, I'd like to explain by means of a story. The story goes something like this. Let's say it's January 1st, day after New Year's, and your resolution is to exercise more. It's a great resolution. We all know that exercise makes you look better, makes you sleep better, makes you feel better. We can all agree that it's a good resolution. Great. Okay, so you've committed to exercise more. Well, before you actually exercise, of course you need the right exercise clothes. You can't exercise without exercise clothes, right? So you spend the first week of January searching out buying the right shorts. You get the best sweat-free tank tops, leggings, armbands, whatever. Get it all stylish and functional. Great. But wait, you can't exercise without the right shoes. So you spend the next few weeks scouring the internet to learn all about exercise shoes. What do we go? Do we go minimalist, maximalist, running shoes, Nike, Adidas, Reebok, whatever it is, you find the pair you want and you finally buy it. Oh, and of course, there's the question of how are you going to exercise? Are you going to go running, biking? Maybe we should go to a gym. Oh, but then which one? I'm going to have to ask my friends around. Now, it's mid-February. You got your gear, you got your clothes, you got your shoes, you've chosen your gym. But the thing is, it's taken so long to start working out that you've lost all motivation to exercise. Whatever, it's February, a big chunk of the year is already done. You can probably wait it out until next December anyways. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm exaggerating, of course, but we all experience some version of this. Maybe it's buying stuff to clean up your house, maybe it's buying tools for your garage, maybe it's collecting kitchen appliances, whatever that might be. And while there are many observations to be made here, the larger mistake I see is this. The tool is not the action. This is a substitution that so many of us make all the time. We get lulled into thinking that having the tool is the same thing as doing the thing. And of course we know that that's never true. Having the right exercise clothes is not the same as exercising. Having kitchen appliances is not the same as cooking. Having a beautiful shoe rack is not the same as keeping your shoes organized. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because despite the fact that we all know that this is true, in our jobs, so many of us tend to act differently. I started this by talking about product analytics. And what I want to propose is that in the product world, the tool is still often taken as a substitute for the action. At the very least, this is the pitch of nearly every data company in the world, that simply having data is the key to making a better product. Indeed, so many companies talk about decision-making, understanding, insights, all of that stuff, when in fact, all they really do is just give you data. And it's as if all that matters is just getting the data. We get you the data and poof, put a dashboard on your computer screen, look at the right metrics, and suddenly a beautiful product magically pops out. It's obviously not how it works. Now, as the co-founder of a product analytics company, I think data is absolutely critical and very important to every single business. But the key is this: just having the data is not the same as using it correctly. The tool is not the action. Having data about your product is not the same as using that data to make better decisions. A Peloton is beautiful, but you don't want it to turn into your clothes rack. So that's what I mean when I say that product analytics is useless. In fact, there's a lot that connects the dots between the data that we collect and our actual goal, which is making a better product. This, I argue, is what the point of product analytics should be. That critical middle part between having the data and knowing how to use that data to make better products. So what I wanted to do today is talk about how at Heap we're working not only to provide the best data, but also how we're working to help people translate that data into better products. We believe that data is best when it's employed in a larger process that's built around using data to make decisions. It's a commitment to process that makes product teams more rigorous and more scalable. And being data-driven doesn't just mean having data, it means having a larger attitude towards how you use that data. So how are we doing this? Well, at Heap, we're focused on something we call the scientific method for product. It's an approach to building products. The basic idea behind it is that we believe that science gives us the best techniques for translating data into actionable results that help us build a better product. That science gives us the tools and the actions we need to ultimately ensure that we're always pursuing the best ideas no matter what we do. So what I'd like to do is to walk through 3 parts of that idea. There are 3 core beliefs here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help product teams be more rigorous, more creative, and more successful. And these 3 things are the things we're building into our product and the way that we want to frame the conversation around how to use product analytics effectively. The first piece is make hypotheses, not decisions. This might seem bold, right? No decisions ever? Well, no. The main idea here is that the best way to figure out what to do is to learn as much as you can about your customer. The best way to learn about something is by making hypotheses and driving experiments. So instead of framing a choice as deciding to roll out a new feature or making a change, first we modify the way we measure something and we frame it as a hypothesis. That means it's an idea about what we think will happen in the future. And we think there are multiple advantages to thinking about it this way. First, it gets you to think ahead. When you decide, you make a choice and you move forward. When you make a hypothesis, however, you specify what you think success looks like, then you measure the effectiveness of your action against those success criteria. The idea here is not to just do something. It's to make an educated test specifying what the thing is supposed to do, whom it's supposed to affect, how it's supposed to affect them, and most importantly, how you'll know if you were successful. What metrics will have changed? How will I know that those metrics changed for the reasons I described? This in turn keeps you more focused on your activities as a product org. If your goal is raising engagement, for example, that could mean anything. If your hypothesis, though, is adding a new user onboarding flow will reduce the number of people who drop off in our setup process, well, then now you have something to think about and to measure. So let's dive into an example here. First example here is from Paul Rosania, who is a former Twitter PM who now works at Slack. He talks about the idea of building a hypothesis tree. The idea is that as you're thinking about making any change, you first make a hypothesis about why you think you should make that change. And then what you do is you make a list of all the supporting beliefs that you think make that hypothesis true. He used this idea to help create the notion of a machine-ranked timeline within Twitter. What you can see here is his main hypothesis, as well as the supporting beliefs that have to be true in order for that hypothesis to end up being true. This is all in the pursuit of helping you be more focused and make smarter decisions. Second piece here is making sure that you use analytics for exploration. That the main point of doing anything in your product isn't necessarily to do the exact right thing. Rather, we think that a better goal is to always be learning. We believe the best way to make better decisions is to know as much as you can about something. Seen this way, a hypothesis isn't necessarily better if it's right. What's more important is the degree to which a hypothesis gives you information. We like to say in our model, the value of a hypothesis is how much signal it gives you, not necessarily whether it's right or wrong. Good hypotheses are the ones that give you the most signal. So that means it's totally okay to be wrong about things. In fact, we encourage it. If you're not wrong sometimes, you're probably not trying hard enough or taking enough risks. So it's all about framing. If you make a decision and it turns out to be wrong, you have to roll that decision back, which is a hard thing to do and potentially embarrassing to all of your coworkers, maybe your users. But if you have a hypothesis about something and you get it wrong, that's okay. I decided to roll out this feature is a much harder action to revert than I hypothesized that this feature would improve conversion, but turns out it lowered conversion. And that hypothesis tells you a lot about what works and what doesn't. Third piece here is that thinking of decisions as hypotheses helps maintain an experimental mindset. The idea behind this is that no product is perfect. Absolutely no company has reached its maximum potential. We're all just trying to get better over time. So focusing on hypotheses rather than decisions dramatically lessens that pressure. All you're doing is trying something out to see what you learn from it. The second initiative we have here is this idea of analytics for exploration. This is one we believe in very deeply, and it's something we at Heap have been building for a long time. This initiative comes from our conviction that it's the things you don't know about your product that end up being the most disruptive. Here's a quote from Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He says, "There is a disproportionate payoff from the unknown, since you typically have little to lose and plenty to gain." The idea there is that if something's unknown, well, fewer people will have thought about it, which means that the potential upside for you is going to be much greater. From a business perspective, that means you should always be on the lookout for something unknown, because it will give you a huge advantage. So how do you maximize the likelihood of finding those unknown unknowns? Well, you can use analytics for exploration. Traditionally, of course, analytics are a kind of documentation. Think most of the dashboards that you see around your office. They're usually used to measure things PMs already know about and to see how those things change over time. In most tools, this would be tedious. Why? Well, because you'd have to start tracking all of those things and then wait for all of that data to roll in. Knowing that most of your explorations wouldn't yield fruit anyways makes that type of strategy untenable. But let's say you do have the data. In that case, it becomes really easy to try any of your creative ideas. If, for example, you don't have to decide what to track, but instead if you had every single piece of customer behavior automatically collected, ready to sort through at will, then testing any of these correlations becomes simple. Well, as it happens, Heap does collect old customer behavior automatically, which makes this kind of exploration easy. In an hour, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can sift through and locate new drivers of retention or acquisition or activation. You can find new subgroups that behave in unique ways. You can see what doesn't fit your patterns, find out why, and start taking next steps. An example here is our customer Third Love. They ran a little experiment, which was testing how different products would be displayed on their Fit Finder quiz. If you're not familiar, Third Love is a direct-to-consumer e-commerce company that offers bras of many different sizes and shapes. A big part of their product involves an online quiz that helps women find the bra that will fit their body. So they were testing how their quiz displays products, and with one experiment they found they had achieved a lower click-through rate. For most people, that would mean a failed experiment. However, for Third Love, who was savvy about their data, they dug deeper and they asked more questions. And they found out that despite the lower click-through rate, more of the people who clicked through actually ended up purchasing. There might have been a localized decrease, but it ended up being better for the business overall. So that's analytics for exploration, and that's how you find the unknown pockets of information. And finally, we have this idea of iterate incrementally. By this, we aim to combat the widely held myth that great products somehow pop out fully formed from the heads of genius PMs or founders. That's always the story we like to tell, at least. But the thing is, we've never actually seen that happen. And what really happens, and as product people you know this, is that you start with an idea, then you work on it, then you work on it, then you work on it. And after a long time, hopefully you've created something that's valuable to somebody out there. For example, You might not recognize what this is, but it's a banana. Or at least it was a banana 500 years ago. How did they end up looking like they do on the right? Turns out it's multiple generations of cultivation and breeding, each step having a small incremental change. Now, another example here is Jerry Seinfeld. He's described many times that it can take him years to get his jokes to their final versions. He tweaks timing, language, emphasis, enunciation, place in the set over and over again until he's comfortable delivering it on stage. And we think about product in the same exact way. Small changes and lots of iteration. Take what you have, then keep making it a little bit better over time. And sometimes you might actually make it a little bit worse, but that's okay. If you're experimenting, you should be getting some things wrong, and you're at least giving yourself the space to take those mistakes back. We think about it this way. If you're trying to get to the top of a building, you can try to jump all you want to get to the top of that building. And you may even make it if you're Godzilla, but you're far more likely to make it to the top there if you just take the stairs. And so we believe that iteration mindset is really, really important. Because if you're looking for major advances, you're going to be less likely to find them. But if you're looking for little things to improve, you're going to be far more likely to stumble into a major discovery. In fact, in a review of Clayton Christensen's famous book, The Innovator's Dilemma, by Jill Lepore, Jill Lepore revisits Christensen's theory and notices an interesting trend, that when stepping back, simple disruption is less important than iteration. As she notes, victory in the disk drive industry appears to have gone to the manufacturers that were good at incremental improvements, whether or not they were actually the first to market a disruptive new format. Companies that were quick to release a new product but not skilled at tinkering have tended to flame out. So I'll read that last sentence again. Companies that were quick to release a new product but not skilled at tinkering have tended to flame out. That's a pretty strong pitch, we believe, for incremental iteration. Now I'm going to share some examples of companies who pursue a similar approach. Airbnb is famous for their heavy use of experimentation. They test many parts of their site, their algorithm, all of it is based on hypotheses, and they don't leave any stone unturned. And lots of these experiments produce no meaningful results for them, and that's absolutely okay. The ones that do work out will inarguably increase revenue and user satisfaction for them. One of the quotes from their data scientists is, "We use controlled experiments to learn and make decisions at every step of product development, from design to algorithms. They are equally important in shaping the user experience." Another example here is Netflix. As I'm sure most of you know, they're legendary for testing many parts of the user experience and content. And some of the changes make small improvements, and some end up making big improvements. But they very much embrace the idea that one should never believe that they're done with their product. Here's a quote from their product team. "Every product change Netflix considers goes through a rigorous A/B testing process before becoming the default user experience." They don't use this terminology, but their process does clearly embrace this idea. The idea that every decision is simply a hypothesis that they test out to see if it works. So those three ideas, make hypotheses not decisions, analytics for exploration, iterate incrementally, are just three components of our general scientific method for product. And we believe that when put together, these help connect the dots from data to product. Are product analytics useful? Of course they are. And our goal is to make sure that product analytics doesn't just mean data, but data plus processes plus smart tested strategies that all work together to produce something great for your customers. Thank you very much.
I just have a quick question for you. Is there anyone within your network who could really benefit from attending this conference today? Think about it. Maybe a friend, family member, or a colleague? Well, just mention them in the comments below so they can be notified. And by the way, for every new comment or for any new social media post, you're earning an additional chance to win a free VIP ticket to attend a ProductCon conference this year. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Pratik and we're going to talk about marketplaces today. So a bit of background on myself. I am a product manager on marketplaces at Lyft. I run shared rides and commute for them. Prior to Lyft, I was at Airbnb running growth for them. Overall, I have about 10 years of product experience, both in growth and two-sided marketplaces. So our objective today is to really give everyone an introduction to marketplaces. How do we think about product and growth strategy within marketplaces? And we'll do this through 3 sections broadly. We'll talk about introduction and we'll introduce you to marketplaces in general. What are they? What do they mean? How do we think about them? We'll talk a lot about strategy, right? Like how do we build marketplaces? How do we start them? How do we grow them? And finally, we'll talk about evolution of marketplaces, where they're going, right? And all of this, I'll use examples and try to make it as real as possible. Right? So let's start with marketplaces and broadly what is the definition of marketplace? To me, it's really an avenue where buyers and sellers come together, connect, and then conduct some sort of commerce. Right? As you can see, this is a place where you have buyers on one side. A lot of people call them as demand. And on the other side, you have sellers, and a lot of people call that a supply. Right? Marketplaces have evolved from the classical sort of Craigslist or eBays of the world, and now have exploded into pretty much every industry. Right? A lot of people think about this as the classical unbundling of Craigslist. You can think about sort of various categories of services that Craigslist provided, and there have been billions of dollars of companies created in each one of those categories. Right? So it goes all the way from campsite booking like HipCamp to car rentals like GetAround to travel activity marketplaces like Airbnb, online sort of music gigs, shopping, which has been really big. Food delivery, right? Everyone knows about DoorDash, online repair services like Thumbtack, you name it, right? And all of these have the same underpinning of connecting buyers with sellers. Why are marketplaces so strong, right? Like what brings them sort of this amount of economic value creation? And fundamentally, it's really around the moats, right? It's really around the network effect that gets created with a marketplace where more buyers lead to more sellers, and ultimately it goes around, right? As you have more buyers, the sellers find more and more value in coming to your marketplace. And similarly, as you have more sellers, your product becomes more and more comprehensive for the buyers, right? And this virtuous cycle, once started, is really hard to break. The economic value that's been created over time has been tremendous, right? And this has started over the last 20 years or so. And you can see some of the classic starts were around eBay, Craigslist, Booking.com, really early, right? Before the .com era. And then a lot of activity around sort of 2005, 2010, the Airbnbs of the world, the Uber of the world started then, right? And then you can see this continued economic value creation even as late as 2015, where DoorDash started, Opendoor started, and we continue to see this, right? Each of this has created economic value which has been in billions of dollars, right? And that's massive. But this doesn't happen by itself. it requires sort of the right environment, and every sort of 10 years or so, the environment has become better over time, right? We have seen proliferation of mobile, we've seen proliferation of long-term evolution, or sort of just better network, better connectivity, better payment systems, and all of this is what leads to a better environment for building these marketplaces. We'll talk a lot more about this and what it is really required to build really solid marketplaces, right? Let's now dive deep into the second section of our presentation, which is much more around strategy, right? So how does one create a marketplace, right? As a product manager, if you're starting a new marketplace, or if you're a product leader in a company which is trying to start a new marketplace, or if you're a founder, how do you think through this, right? And fundamentally, there are 3 stages of building a marketplace. Most marketplaces I know have gone through this evolution. It all starts with seeding a marketplace, which is understanding and starting with a very, very niche and specific section and starting to seed the supply or the sellers, right? And that's your first step. Your second step is then to focus on growth, right? Assuming that you sort of seeded this well and you've begun sort of the marketplace, your second stage is really around growing the marketplace, both on supply and demand, right? Which means bringing in both sellers as well as buyers and growing both sides. And we'll talk about that. And lastly, it's really around scaling and providing defensibility to the marketplace. We'll talk a lot around things that are important to add to improve defensibility of a marketplace. So let's start with seeding a marketplace, right? So think about this, put yourself in the shoes of Airbnb founders or Uber founders or Lyft founders really early on. When they knew that they wanted to try and build something, how do you start this? Like, how do you seed a marketplace in places where there are existing things around, right? There are 5 different ways I've usually seen people seed marketplaces. The first one is really around identifying unique inventory, right? And unique inventory could be a simple example could be Etsy, right? And what Etsy did was, even though eBay had been around for a long time, Etsy identified a really clear segment of handmade goods, right? And they went after that as the segment of sellers, right? Another one could be convincing existing sellers to list on your platform. So Airbnb is a classical example of this, where Airbnb convinced home sharers, right, or people who wanted to put up their homes for rent, to move from Craigslist to Airbnb, right? Bringing customers to a provider, that's a third strategy. And we see a lot of food delivery services go after this, right? Where restaurants have an existing service, and what your marketplace is now doing is just bringing more customers to the provider. The fourth one is paying for inventory. This has been interesting. Like, I've seen examples of this time and time again. Uber's done it, where in certain cities or certain markets, they would just pay for drivers to come onto their platform, even if they're not getting sort of enough riders, right? And they can do it through guaranteed income, they can do it through incentives, but all of this to try and seed supply very early on, right? And lastly, aggregate readily accessible inventory. So there are places where you have supply, but in different places. And what your marketplace can do is just aggregate all of them together, right? So again, 5 different strategies, but the crux of this is that a marketplace starts with thinking about very clearly who your seller is, what that niche is, and how do you bring and seed them in a specific place. So that's your first stage. Let's talk about the second stage, right? So let's say now that you've seeded your marketplace with the right supply, how do you grow this, right? How do you think about growing both supply and demand, right? So there's, again, sellers and buyers on your marketplace. And this is where a lot of growth comes in, right? So classically, when a lot of these companies hire product managers, they also hire growth-focused product managers. And fundamentally, growth-focused product managers are trying to solve the problem of how do you bring more sellers or buyers to your existing service, and then how do you make sure that they keep coming back over and over again, right? So the way we think about this is really around acquisition and activation, which is just getting more new buyers and sellers, right? Various sort of tactics around that, around search, a lot of classical marketing tactics around search, display, paid, affiliates, but also things like virality, right? And you've seen sort of Dropbox use virality really, really well. Airbnb use virality really, really well, right? And that is for acquiring new customers. Equally important, if not more important, is retention and engagement, right? Which is how do you bring your customers over and over again to experience the service? And various tactics over here, again, around engagement, CRM tools, loyalty programs, and really around community and network effects, right? All of this is underpinned by really solid data foundation in growth, right? Like growth product managers always think through experiments, think about A/B testing, think about analyzing, and ultimately personalizing this experience, right? So if you do this really, really well, there are levers that work at different stages of a growing marketplace. But time and over again, I've seen these levers becoming really important as you grow a marketplace, right? And that's your second stage, again, growing a marketplace. And then finally, when you're at the stage of scaling and defending a marketplace, this becomes really important in terms of how do you defend and how do you make sure that another marketplace doesn't come and take your place, right? And this begins with building really core products for both your sellers and buyers, which makes sure that your sellers and buyers prefer you as a marketplace, right? This could be done through various ways. Trust and safety, right? Thinking through rating systems, user reviews, testimonials. Airbnb did a really good job at this. Uber and Lyft have done a really good job at this, which is fundamental to the health of their marketplaces, right? Supporting power sellers, again, power seller programs, insurances, customer support, these have all been really, really important programs. I've seen this both at Airbnb and Lyft, right? Developing an ecosystem, right? So thinking about leasing, financial services, mechanics, property management, all of this has been really important again, right? I've seen sort of large product teams just focused on leasing and financial services or mechanics or property management. Preventing leakage, which is the fourth one, again, really important. You don't want your customers to go out of your system and directly transact with each other. And that comes back to what is the value that you're providing as a marketplace to both buyers and sellers, right? And finally, building moats, right, which is around how do you make sure that your buyers are always coming to you, right? How do you make sure that your suppliers are just listing with you as opposed to listing with 3 other competitors? And this, again, is important in terms of making sure that both your buyers and sellers continue to prefer you as a primary marketplace. So that's sort of the third stage of scaling and defending a marketplace, right? So we went through 3 stages: seeding, growing, and then scaling and defending a marketplace. Let's talk about some of the secret sauce ultimately that underpins most successful marketplaces. What I've seen time and over again has been marketplaces who go vertical and really nail certain verticals have won and have done this really well. Focusing on a unique set of inventory, right? Be it the Etsy example or the Airbnb example, where you sort of have unique inventory which is differentiated and which you can claim as only your marketplace would have is really important. And finally, developing a 10x better product, right? Like, so when you're thinking about marketplaces, ultimately you want to develop a product which is so far beyond what the current competition provides that your customers see it as a no-brainer to come to you, right? These have all been sort of the secret sauce which have been done really, really well with large marketplaces. We'll take a few case studies, right? So let's talk about flywheels and sort of how companies have built out sort of marketplaces both on supply and demand side. So on the Airbnb's example, the flywheel for Airbnb is really around travelers and hosts, right? And as more and more hosts were brought on to Airbnb platform, that provided greater selection for the travelers, right? It provided a better experience, And ultimately that led to more travelers coming and booking more, right? And as you sort of have more travelers, the travelers started writing their own reviews, right? And as the reviews sort of started growing, that helped the travelers bring in other travelers, right? In addition to virality and sort of network effects over there, you sort of started seeing same side network effects, right? Again, as more travelers came on board, you started seeing more bookings, and more bookings started attracting more hosts, right? So this now becomes sort of a virtuous cycle where firstly you have cross-side network effect, right? Which is just more hosts is better for bringing more travelers, and more travelers brings in more hosts. But you also see same-side network effects, which is more travelers ultimately help bring in more travelers, right? Because you have reviews, you have virality, and that helps the whole flywheel go, right? So this is Airbnb. We'll talk another case study, and this would be Uber, right? And in Uber's case, it's really sort of the cross-site network effect. And here you have drivers, and as sort of drivers, more and more drivers come on board, your wait time and fares just reduce for our customers, right? Or for the riders. And as your price goes down, as your wait time goes down, the experience just starts becoming better. And then you start seeing more riders start using your service. And as more riders start using your service, the drivers start earning more, right? They get more rides per hour, they get higher earnings, and this ultimately drives more drivers, right? One interesting thing about Uber's network effect is it's much more local, whereas Airbnb's network effect is much more global. We'll talk a lot more about that. But it's an interesting sort of two different case studies around Airbnb and Uber's flywheels, if it were. With this, I want to finish with sort of our last section, which is evolution, right? So we talked about introduction of marketplaces, what marketplaces are, where they're going, what's happening, strategy around how do you start a marketplace, what are the stages of growing and scaling marketplaces, and now let's talk about evolution of marketplaces, right? Marketplaces fundamentally, there are about various ways in which people talk about like how do you make sure that new and upcoming marketplaces, would they be successful? Do we know if this particular marketplace will win versus not? What are some of the success factors here, right? And we've seen various sort of different ways in which you categorize this. Bill Gurley has a really famous essay where he talks about the top 10 characteristics of successful marketplaces. I sort of look at it as much more simplistic, sort of 5 different ways in which you can characterize very quickly whether a marketplace is going to be successful or not, right? The first one is fragmentation, and this is around, do you have a diverse enough supply and demand, right? Do you have diverse enough buyers and sellers, and are they lots? The second one is relationship, right? Do they have a relationship where they will continue to go to the same person over and over again? For example, in childcare or doctors, or are they exchangeable or tradable, right? Like your drivers, and that matters. And it matters because it then provides value in terms of what a marketplace brings in, right? Frequency, how often are the transactions happening, right? Is this something that's being done once a year, once in a few years, like buying a car? Or is this something that happens almost daily, right? Like taking a ride. Payment and trust, right? Is payment an integral part of the marketplace? Or is payment not happening through the marketplace? Those are really important things to consider. And finally, expansion, right? How do we think about a marketplace and then think about, are we bringing in a completely new kind of supply or a completely new kind of demand, or just expanding the market itself? Again, really important to think through, right? So take case in point Airbnb. What they really did was expanded the supply, where people who weren't even ever going to be hoteliers started renting out their homes. And as a result of that, that just created a completely new category of suppliers, right? You see that example in various marketplaces. But those are some of the fundamental success factors which help decide what kind of marketplace is this going to be, and how is it going to evolve over time. Another thing to think through is defensibility, again in terms of types of network effect, right? there are companies which have a much more local network effect, right? We talked about network effect being more buyers bring in more sellers and vice versa. In cases like Lyft or TaskRabbit, these are much more local, right? You want your buyers and sellers to be local, and as a result of that, your growth comes from local buyers and local sellers. We call this as local network effect or route density network effect. Compare this to very different sort of examples of Airbnb, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, where you have global network effects, right? Your buyers and sellers can be anywhere in the world. In fact, more likely, right, like with Airbnb, you're going to travel to different places. So as you bring in new supply and as that helps bring in new demand, they're going to be fundamentally global, right? And because of that effect, your network effect becomes far more stronger in some sense, and it's far harder to try and replicate it in a different part of the world. Let's talk a little bit about marketplace models. Again, this is how are marketplaces evolving, right? And it all started really early with one sort of model, but now we've started seeing various models come across, right? On-demand marketplaces, right? Things like Uber, Airbnb, Instacart, managed marketplaces, and we'll talk a little bit more about managed marketplaces, but things like Opendoor, RealReal, where your supply is really starting to get managed a bit more by the marketplace itself. Community-led marketplaces, right? This again is a model around thinking about certain kind of community, both on the seller and buyer side. And Etsy is a classical example of that. People who are really entrenched in homemade goods, both on buying and selling side, brings across that sort of marketplace. SaaS-enabled marketplaces is a fourth one. Again, these are things like OpenTable, Zenefits. These started off as service for particular companies, right? And then grew out from there to actually become a marketplace. And lastly, sort of we're starting to see this concept of decentralized marketplaces, where new technologies like blockchain are potentially going to provide the basis of new kinds of marketplaces coming together. Right? Let's talk a little bit about evolution of marketplaces over time. It all started long time ago. To be honest, marketplaces have been around for the longest time, but it really is around the offline Walmarts, Costco's, Sears of the world, which have always been there in terms of offline marketplaces. But now you start seeing Amazon, Craigslist, eBay. These were the starting points of online marketplaces. In the 2010s, you started seeing a lot of task-based marketplaces. Folks like Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit. And this is now starting to evolve into skill-based marketplaces, where it's not just supply from anyone, or it's not just people who are unskilled as such, but we're starting to see marketplaces evolve in very specific skill talent bases, right? Upwork, Thumbtack, where you have genres of sellers or genres of people who have very specific skills to offer, right? And we're going to continue seeing this, even going into professional services like healthcare or services like gigs itself. A similar sort of thought process on evolution of services marketplace, where it all started with listings. It sort of went into the unbundling of Craigslist era, went to the Uber of X era, right? And really the Uber of X could be DoorDash or it could be other places. We're now starting to see a lot of managed marketplaces come together, right? Which are, again, one classical example of this is Wonderschool, right? It's a marketplace which allows for childcare at home, right? Now you can think about this as childcare for home requires a much more trained and managed seller experience or a supply experience to be able to make it worthwhile, right? Like the amount of trust, the amount of training that you need on the seller side or the supply side is just to a different level, right? And that is going to continue, right? And that is really where everyone's betting on the future of marketplaces. Let's bring it all back together in terms of the key takeaways today for marketplaces, right? So we talked about the introductions of marketplaces, and really the first section was around how much economic value marketplaces are creating, right? It's really because of the network effects that these economic values are created and sustained over time. And these are continued to be supported by newer technologies that come up every time, right? We talked in our second section around strategy, we talked a lot about building a marketplace, and that really is an art and science, right? We talked about 3 stages. We then talked about secret sauce, really, around going vertical, building 10x products, like having really unique inventory. And then we finally talked in the last section around where evolution of marketplaces, right? Really, where are marketplaces going? And this was really around like different kinds of marketplaces, how the classical unbundling of Craigslist went from the listing era to sort of the on-demand era, and now going more and more towards the managed side of the world. I expect that to continue. And a lot of this is now product challenges, right? And as product managers, these are really exciting challenges, and this is an exciting time to be in marketplaces. Thank you.
The Prodi Awards are the awards honoring the best products of the year. The Product School team and network of product leaders who teach our courses carefully created the different categories and nominated around 10 products per category. We believe in transparency and putting the user in control, so the winners of each category were based on popular voting. We launched the Prodi Awards for 2020. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this video with the winners of the Prodi Awards for 2019. A lot of you are asking me to elaborate a little bit more on Product School. Well, Product School is the global leader in product management training. We deliver our training across 10 physical locations around the world, and we also have a live online campus where we can deliver the exact same training. In any case, all of our instructors are product leaders working at top technology companies such as Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Netflix, Uber, or Airbnb. Actually, most of the speakers today are also instructors at Product School. Well, unlike most of the MBAs that are focused on helping students get a job in consulting or in finance, we are exclusively focused on helping people grow their careers in product management. And we have 3 different certifications. Our product management certification is focused on the aspiring product managers who are looking to get that first product management job. while the other two certifications are focused on the experienced product managers who wants to continue growing in their career. And then in addition to the training for individuals, we also offer training for corporations. And that training can happen anywhere in the world since we do it in-house wherever the client is. The main reason why these clients hire us is because they either want to onboard new talent or level up their product management skills within their organization. So at the end of the day, it's all about building a community and trying to give back as much as possible. That's why we also produce thousands of events. We host a podcast, we produce ebooks, we do an annual report on the future of product management, we launch the Prodi Awards, and in general, we are trying to produce as much free, high-quality content as possible to continue leveling the playing field.
Hey there, my name is Robbie Allen, and what I'm here to talk to you about today is how to measure growth and then what to do next. So just for a little bit of context, to get the awkward piece out of the way, I'm from New Zealand, hence the funny accent. That's where I was born and raised, and then I came to the US for graduate school. Since then, I've been working in growth for almost the last 10 years. So I worked at Zynga on a Facebook game called Farmville, which some of you may have heard of, selling virtual unicorns, but we did a range of kind of price optimization and really one of the more analytical growth teams that I've had the chance to work with. I spent some time at SurveyMonkey, the online surveys business, where I ran the mobile team, and we really rethought what mobile meant to the company and did a ton of work on new user onboarding. And currently I'm at Intercom, where we help businesses chat to their customers. Product School here is a customer, and at Intercom what I've done is worked on a range of first use, brand new user onboarding, churn, pricing and packaging, like right across the growth stack. So for today, if you were to take one thing and only one thing away, it's that the role of growth is just the same as the role of product management. It's to make something people want. There's this famous Paul Graham quote that I think is perfect. The goal is to make something people want, and it's very easy in growth to get trapped into a range of metrics and frameworks and processes. And the thing that I find it's really helpful to remember is that at the core, what growth is making something people want. The thing that separates growth product from core product commonly, and there's a range of ways to define this, the way that I find most helpful is that core PM is typically responsible for making brand new product, like net new product that helps customers solve problems in their lives. Whereas growth PM is typically responsible for connecting existing customers or new customers with that value, helping people to use and discover the product that you have. But at its core, it's very, very similar. And to be successful in growth, you actually want to not lose sight of that. For today, I want to do four main things. First, I want to talk about the key metrics in growth. It can seem really complicated, but they're actually pretty simple. I want to talk then about how do you actually measure them practically. Let's make this real, because if you measure this wrong, you won't get the results that you want. And then finally, I want to talk about, okay, that's all great to measure it, but how do you actually move those metrics? How do you build product? And we're going to talk about the ways in which you can use the most useful, the highest leverage growth metrics, and also really at its core, what you want to do is solve problems that people want. So, to start with, what I want to go through is the main growth metrics that you might see. So first, the simplest way to think about growth is, I think, the sort of best way to start. The first place that your company or your product or even a feature in your product starts is getting people to know about it. Often we say that this is acquisition. The whole idea of acquisition and the way that I would measure it is really how many people have ever used your product. After acquisition, you have engagement. What engagement is really measuring is like, are people getting value on a recurring basis from your product? So acquisition is getting people to sign up, and then engagement is actually getting people to get value out of it and get value repeatedly. And then finally, what we also look at is retention. A lot of different ways to measure retention or its inverse churn, But fundamentally what retention is do people keep coming back? Are you keeping your customers or not? Now there's lots of ways to measure these, but fundamentally I think all growth metrics really ladder up to these three main metrics. The thing to remember is that a lot of time we spend time focused on acquisition. How many website hits have you got? How many downloads does your mobile app have? In actual fact, acquisition is pretty easy to game. It's also not particularly useful. Getting people to try your product is often pretty easy, but the measure of success for any product manager and what defines success for a product is, do people actually get value out of it? It's not just getting people to try it. Fundamentally, it's not solving problems for them, and it's not useful. Getting people to repeatedly get value out of your product and to continue using it, that's kind of hard to do, but that's the stuff that's really going to make a big difference. So as you think about the metrics, understand the range of metrics that we look at typically in growth, but also realize that there's not a whole lot of points for acquisition. It's certainly important, but as a product manager, most of your time should be spent in engagement and especially in retention. So the first thing we talked about is like, how do you measure the right things? The second piece is like, how do you measure them the right way? So what I want to take is the funnel that we just talked about, and what I'm going to do is add this idea of active users. So when we were talking about growth, the funnel that I laid out, there sort of flows. How many people do we acquire today? How many people were engaged today? How many people have retained? You'll often see them as percentages or some sort of measure like that. But that's the flows through your product. But the other thing that we want to take care of, and the ultimate result we want to drive, is the stock, right? And one way to think about stocks and flows is the old famous leaky bucket model. I imagine a bunch of other people have spoken about it, or you might have come across it before. But I'm going to just put it in context for the presentation today. So the idea of the leaky bucket model is to illustrate this idea of stocks and flows. So acquisition is this idea of the liquid going into this bucket. So you acquire new users, you put them in the top of this bucket. And then engagement is the users that continue to use your product more. How active are they when they're in that bucket of kind of active use? They're getting value out of your product, but how much and how frequently? And then retention, or again, it's inverse churn, is the measure of how many people are leaving your product. It's that kind of water coming out of the bucket. And what we're trying to drive is the size, how many active users we have, the liquid in that bucket. And the benefit of the leaky bucket model is it makes it really easy to understand that it doesn't matter how much liquid you put in the top of this thing. If it's draining out faster than you're putting people in, then you're actually never going to grow the size of this bucket. And in actual fact, the way to grow the largest bucket, to build the biggest product, to have the most success, is to have the least amount of leakage that you can, which is why retention is super important, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we have these measures of active users, but what does it mean to be an active user? Now, it's really important that you measure activity in the best way. Now, what I would suggest is that as you think about measuring what is an active user, who actually used my product, it's not about acquisition, it's not about downloads, nor is it about people that sort of opened your website or went to your website. To go back to the central theme that I'll kind of bang on about in this presentation, the way you want to measure an active user, who was actually an active user in our leaky bucket model, is someone that actually got the value that your product is supposed to provide. So it's not about some easy to measure sort of technical definition, such as a website visitor. It's much more defined in the context of your product and what value means. Here's two examples that I find really helpful. And the first is Uber. Uber is a service that allows you to book a car from A to B, and mostly they run through their mobile app. Just opening the Uber app doesn't count, right? That's not active usage. What would active usage be for Uber? Well, my thinking is it's probably how many people are riding on the service. Did you take a ride in the last week? So typically for a measure of active usage, you want a thing that someone's done and also a frequency that might be in. The way to set the frequency that you should be looking at for your product is really like how frequently does this thing occur? So for example, at SurveyMonkey, sending a survey is not something that people do every week. So the measurement of an active user is not going to be weekly. It's probably over a much longer time period. Whereas with Uber, typically people might use it to go out in the weekends or in evenings, and some people may commute with it. So a weekly basis feels about right for Uber. The need for transportation probably occurs at least once a week. So in that case, it's not about opening an app. It's really about getting value, which is taking a ride with Uber. If you can't get a ride on Uber, it kind of sucks, and you're not going to retain. Likewise, Netflix, a pretty common product that I imagine a lot of us have used. Now, with Netflix, the whole purpose here is consuming content, right? They have a bunch of shows and movies that you may want to watch. Again, for Netflix, logging in is not helpful. That's not value. You didn't get any value out of the product. And even browsing around, you could have spent 5 minutes on Netflix, but if it was that 5 minutes that you're looking around trying to find a show and you can't find a show, you didn't get value out of that session. You shouldn't count as an active user. And so the way that Netflix at one point measured this was saying they measured someone as active as someone who had viewed Netflix for at least 20 minutes in a week. 20 minutes, not coincidentally, is the length of time it takes to watch a show, a sitcom show or something like that, without the credits and without the ads. And so really what Netflix are measuring there is, look, if you've been here in the product for 20 minutes and watched a show, that counts as having got value. And if we keep people watching shows in our product, they'll probably keep coming back. But they were excluding all the people who only spent, say, 5 minutes in the product, because the assumption being, look, they have likely just kind of been surfing around, they haven't managed to find something, they haven't got value, and so they shouldn't count as an active user. So when we're measuring engagement and measuring activity, it's super important to focus on a measure that actually correlates with getting value out of your product, not just some vanity metric like downloads or app opens or something like that. That's something that's really common, and shifting from a very simple measure to a measure that correlates with value in your product will really shift the way that you think about the metrics and make it much easier to move them. So we've talked about measuring the right things, which is super important. You also want to measure them the right way. So we measure activity as it correlates to value. We don't measure it just by some technical metric. The next two things I want to talk about is how do we actually move those metrics? Where should we focus our time as growth product people? And then also, what are some of the ways that we can make a difference? So the first thing I want to talk about is, look, it's so important above anything to keep the users that you already have. In our leaky bucket model, the analogy of the best way to grow the largest bucket is to have a bucket that just doesn't leak, because then everything you tip in the top is going to stay there, applies to products as well. If your product's really successful and it gives value to your customers, then they're likely to stick around. And if they're sticking around, you'll find that all the acquisition, all that money on paid ads, all that kind of blog content, whatever it is that you're doing, will end up growing your business. The reality is not everyone who signs up for your product is going to stick around. A common way to measure that is with a retention curve. What a retention curve measures is the percentage of a percentage of people who signed up. As you look over time, how many of those customers are still active? So how many of those people are still getting value over time? The shape of these curves really matters. As a product manager in growth, you'll often find yourself looking at retention curves, and there's a really common mistake that's made here. Here I've got two retention curves. The green one, we see that in every week in the green product, there are more people, or a greater percentage of the people are still using that product for the first 3 weeks. For the blue product, fewer people. Now it seems that the green product's going better, or it's closer to sort of product market fit. But the shape of these curves is a little different. If you look at it, the green, and we'll extend these a little bit more, is a little bit flatter or is a little bit steeper. And the the blue curve flattens out a bit. And if we continue this further, it's kind of easy to see. So here we are at week 6. What's happened is the people that signed up for the green product, they're still leaving. Every week there's a pretty steady stream of people that leave the product, whereas in the blue product what's happened is a good chunk of people, it looks like about 70%, tried it, said it wasn't for them, but the people that are sticking around are really sticking around. They've stopped sort of draining out. And if we continue this over time, what we see is that the kind of blue product has this really solid base of users. It's still around 30% of its signups are kind of active after 12 weeks. They're still getting value from the product. They're still paying or contributing value in some way and getting value as well. And in this green product, what we see is that because there's continual churn from that product, very quickly after 12 weeks, there's very few customers left. So of all the things you can do as a product manager, every time the most useful thing is to improve retention. If you can keep the users that you already have, it's going to make a huge difference. And the thing to look for, if you launch a new product or if you launch a new feature, it's never going to appeal to everyone. There's always going to be some sort of circumstances that mean that everyone that signs up for your product isn't going to be totally a perfect fit. So it's expected that people might try it out for a little bit and then say, look, it's not for them. But what you want is a real core of usage of people that decide they really like the product. And so looking at this chart, I'd say blue probably has some kind of product market fit, whether this is representing a product or a feature, and green not so much. So you want to look for those nice flat retention curves. The final thing is to talk about, look, how do we actually, beyond just specifically thinking about retention, how do you actually move some of these metrics? What's a repeatable process that you can use? And it's solving customer problems. And I want to talk about really practically what that means. What growth is not is this. It's not those notifications that you get that are, we miss you, or please come back, or something like that. That message is totally focused on what the business wants and not what the customer wants. And they feel kind of hollow, because at the bottom of we miss you, it's not we miss you. A business often may not know its customers personally, even though that really helps, is that what they're really saying is, we miss your money, we miss your patronage. And instead of saying, we miss you, what you really want to be focused on and sending more notifications, things like that, what you should focus on is actually providing more value. Customers will totally stick around, and you yourself continue to use businesses and kind of buy services that solve problems for you. And so rather than sending a series of notifications that are increasingly irrelevant, what you actually want to do is solve problems for your users and help them connect with the value that your product has. Great to say, but how do you actually do that? Because it can seem a long way from saying designing product features, which is what you ship, that then somehow are supposed to impact business results. Now, the thing about growth is often you're doing this whole thing backwards. So what you're starting with is a business result that you want, and then you're working backwards to design product features that will drive that business result. But again, that's kind of opaque. How do you actually work through that whole process? The way to do that is to look at the intermediate steps. So, to get business results, you have to drive your customers to do certain things, subscribe or stay retained or something like that. Customer behavior is sort of measurable things in your product, and as a result of that, you get the business results that you want. Now, the way that you drive that behavior is solve specific problems for your customers. People will churn for a specific reason. They didn't get value, they couldn't find a particular feature, they couldn't find content that they liked, things like that. And the way to create features that will drive growth is to really understand what are those problems, what is it that's keeping customers from experiencing the value of our product, and solving those problems. It's not a series of notifications, it's not a series of hacks, it's not those sorts of things. Fundamentally, what you want to do is understand the customer problems, design features that solve those problems. The way you know you've done that is you actually see the customer behavior change, and as a result, you'll get business impact. Connecting these together is often really difficult in the context of a business, but a way that to know that you're making progress is to really know that you understand why customers aren't sticking around or aren't engaging as much as you'd like in your product, to be shipping features that are intended to solve those problems. And the way you can measure success is by, hey, look, are we actually driving customer behaviors to change? And typically when you drive that behavioral change, you get people to come back to your product much more. You'll find that naturally the things that you want, better upgrade rates, better subscription growth, better retention, they all flow out of that. That's how you get the business results. But start again with solving those customer problems. the questions you can ask at each stage, there's really specific questions you can ask. So if you want to drive a specific business result, so maybe that's a revenue growth, what are the customer behaviors that I would need? You do some analysis to understand the behaviors that would drive that particular business result. Once you have the business result, or the customer behaviors you want, you then will do research, talk to customers to understand, well, why aren't they behaving the way that I want to right now? And what might induce them to behave that way? And then once you understand the problem, customers can't discover the settings page or something like that, that's a really tightly scoped problem that you can go to your design team and say, hey, we got a problem that we've got to solve. And then you can design that a feature, you ship it, you measure results in terms of the customer's behavior and business results, and then once you've solved that problem, move on to the next one and the next one, and that's how you stack together a series of growth initiatives, which in sum can have really huge impacts on the performance of your business and, as a result, your own career. So, at its core, growth is just the same as regular product management. It's all about making something people want. What you want to do is understand the customer problems that are getting in the way of your customers using your product and sticking around and solving them. And the way that you can measure that progress is by looking at the customer behaviors that you're driving and continually kind of iterating by understanding the problems that your customers want to solve. Thanks very much.
Hope you're enjoying this online conference. By the way, we also produce 5 in-person conferences called ProductCon, and they happen in San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, New York, and London. That's a great opportunity to meet with product leaders in person. We gather anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 people. And if you're interested in making it happen this year, check out productcon.com and hopefully we can meet in person very soon. Hey, I want to send you my support and share the initiatives that we are taking from Product School to help you stay active during this difficult time. So if you go to our website, productschool.com, and scroll down to the bottom of it, you'll find a link that says free resources. So when you click on it, you're going to be directed to a page that includes all the different free resources that you can take online at your own pace, starting with this interview checklist that has been curated by top recruiters and includes key questions and answers that you are going to face during a product management interview process. We are also including all our books for free. Some of the books are focused on career advice and how to get a product management job. Others are focused on helping you build better products and better teams. So I encourage you to check them out. You can download them for free, as well as our podcast. Our podcast includes interviews with top product managers working at key companies in the space, and you can listen them for free through any of the platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. So here it is. And I know that especially during this time where we are all working from home, sometimes it can feel lonely. So I just want to remind you of our online communities that you can join on Slack or Facebook or LinkedIn. Each community has over 25,000 product managers in it and anywhere between 1 to 2,000 active product managers there every single day. So it's a good opportunity to check in on each other, ask for advice, and just stay connected because we are going through all of this together. Then, in addition to all of these asynchronous resources that we consolidated into this page, we're also increasing the frequency of all of our live online events, like the one that you are enjoying today. So, if you click on the events option that's on the header of this website, you'll be directed to a page where you can see the agenda for all the upcoming events. So we're moving all of our in-person events to online. So just select the online location here at this drop-down list, and then you'll see that every single day we have at least one webinar that is being led by a different product leader from companies such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Masterclass, Google, and others. And this is including Saturdays and Sundays. So I hope all of this helps you continue growing your career and staying active while working from home. Stay healthy.
Welcome to a talk about the world in 50 years, 8 technology trends that will have an outsized impact on our lives. Over the next half hour, we're going to talk about what these 8 interconnected technology trends are, what they could look like in the year 2030 through the eyes of a product manager, and how you as product managers can shape the future around these 8 interconnected technology trends. My name is Brendan Foley. I'm a Vice President of Product Management and Developer Experience at Automation Anywhere. Automation Anywhere is the world's most broadly deployed intelligent automation platform. Our software enables anyone from a business user all the way through a professional software developer to create automations, to create bots and digital workers that can automate the manual and tedious tasks associated with common business processes. Everything from HR and finance through sales operations, supply chain management, and other things. And by being integrated with artificial intelligence, our software enables users to back away from the manual, tedious tasks that they have to do on a day-to-day basis so that they can really focus on strategic questions and how to add more value to the business and be more productive. Automation and intelligent automation are one of the key technology trends that we're going to be talking about in this presentation. But first, let's take a look back 50 years. The smiling toddler in this picture could be really any toddler, except it's me. In this picture, which was taken around 1972 using a Kodak Instamatic camera, captures a moment in time that in one sense seems like it happened a long time ago, but for those of us who lived through the 1970s, doesn't really seem like it was very long ago at all. That world of the 1970s would seem like a foreign land to a lot of people if you didn't live through it. A world of corded phones, of punch card computing before there were keyboards and personal computers, of phone books, of cathode ray televisions, and 3 news channels where everybody got the news. But to those who live in 50 years' time, in the year 2070, when they look back at a picture of our world will just look as foreign to them as the 1970s looks to a lot of people today. There are 8 interconnected technology trends that are going to have an outsized impact on our world over the next 50 years. We won't see these trends on a day-to-day basis, just like how we grow and evolve on a day-to-day basis. It's not something that we notice in the moment. And these 8 interconnected technology trends that we're going to talk about are not all going to move at the same speed. Some of these will be impacted by key infrastructure investments that are needed in order to make them happen, and regulatory changes that need to occur in order for technology to be adopted. And the rollout of these technology trends will really vary broadly by geography in the world, depending on the readiness to adopt on a country or on a regional basis. And of course, for all of these technology trends, there are key business model and technical challenges to be overcome. But eventually, over the course of the next decade and the decade after that and so forth, they will create a new normal for things that we didn't know we wanted, but now do. And we'll know that this new normal has arrived when there are products and services that are just taken for granted, that are easy to use, low cost, and deliver value far beyond what we had previously imagined. And that new normal then becomes what we take for granted, but is the resulting output of these 8 interconnected technology trends. So let's take a look at each of these trends, and as we talk about them, they really are very much closely interconnected with each other. The first one is more powerful computing. And today we see this through the advent of cloud computing, where cloud computing is now readily available and distributed. But we're going to see high-powered computing go far beyond that. We'll see high-powered computing extended to the network edge, so that data collection, data analysis, and responses are pushed ever closer and closer to a breadth of devices, of an Internet of Things that enables new experiences that weren't previously feasible. And this will be followed by quantum computing, initially delivered through the cloud, but it will exponentially change what we recognize as what's possible to compute. Today's computers are based on the bit, based on a 0 or a 1 within our processors. But tomorrow's quantum computing will be based on the quantum bit or the qubit, where a state doesn't have to be 0 or 1. It can be a combination of any of the states between 0 and 1. This will really unlock what's possible to compute, and really change what we can experience in a breadth of areas, from security and medicine to personalization and other things that we thought were never possible to compute and deliver services around, but now are. And with this advent of high-powered computing, it will be available everywhere through high bandwidth wireless. It's starting today with 5G, with the rollout of 5G. But in the coming decades, we'll go well beyond 5G to 6G and 7G, where high bandwidth wireless will be available everywhere, and it'll enable easier and faster access to computing, and also the ability to share data across a breadth of devices, so that devices can talk to each other and intelligence happens even more rapidly between devices. And from any device. So the next generation of devices will really be freed from the design constraints of prior years, enabled by low-cost, ever smaller lithium-ion batteries. We'll eventually see that everything becomes smart. Clothing, wearable devices, appliances, drones, cars, homes, and a breadth of other Internet of Things devices, where these devices are sharing more data between the cloud, where high-performance computing is occurring, and also between devices, further enabled by computing power at the network edge. Delivering intelligence. The more data that artificial intelligence algorithms have access to, the more readily they can identify patterns, which then leads to better insights, recommendations, and decision making for businesses and consumers. And through artificial intelligence that can be delivered everywhere, we will increasingly see personalized experiences, especially expanded through augmented and virtual reality overlays on the world that have an impact both in our home and in our business environments. With automation for how we work and play, we're increasingly seeing a convergence between artificial intelligence and easy-to-use automation tools that allow us to create digital assistants that can automate the manual, tedious tasks that we experience every day in our home and our work. Eventually, we will become our own IT departments, being able to create digital assistants easily that are powered through artificial intelligence that really free us from the manual, tedious tasks that we face, whether at home or at work, so we can focus on the right questions. What do we want, and what's the best way for us to achieve that? And improvements for how we live. Artificial intelligence combined with medical breakthroughs that are happening today and will only accelerate over the coming years in things like gene therapy, in regenerative medicine, and in medical sensors will ultimately enable us to receive personalized medical advice and personalized medical treatment for prevention and for our ongoing health, as well as for cures for diseases, customized to us as individuals. Transparency and trust will extend across connected marketplaces. Today you see that there's a broad range of digital marketplaces for just about anything you can think of, from hotels and car services through personalized services and applications. But what we will see over the coming years is the advent of blockchain technology, which through digital distributed ledgers enables buyers and sellers on a worldwide basis to come together in a trusted way without the need for a middleman. And it won't just be buyers and sellers that are brought together, but also transactions between devices, so that we will experience a world where buyers and sellers continuously come together to deliver to add value, and devices are able to engage in transactions to provide better products and services. And last but not least, the need for security will become ever more critical. As we talk about an always connected and always personalized world, the surface area for potential attacks will increase exponentially. But through biometrics and other personalized forms of security, both behavioral as well as physical biometrics, will improve the control of where and how we present our data to the world, so that we'll be in control of the personalized experiences that are delivered to us. So these are the 8 interconnected technology trends that we're going to be seeing over the course of the coming decades. And today, we're seeing these trends already play in the year 2020. Just to name a few, and this is not by any means an exhaustive list. Compared to 10 years ago, cloud computing is now considered a standard, where many companies are now spending their new investment or they're allocating additional investments to cloud computing. The concept of quantum computing continues to rapidly progress. In fact, in September of last year, a quantum chip from Google solved a problem in less than 200 seconds that would have taken 10,000 years for a supercomputer to solve. It was the first example, or one of the first examples, of where quantum computing has solved problems that could never have been solved by traditional computing techniques. We've already started seeing the rollout of 5G wireless, and with it the dramatic increase in wireless bandwidth, with the promise of being able to download movies in seconds versus minutes. And this will only continue to, the available bandwidth will only continue to grow as we advance to 6G and beyond. Lithium-ion batteries continue to drop in price, on average 7% a year or more from now through the year 2020. And so it's not surprising that lots of consumers expect that by the year 2030, that connected devices, the Internet of Things, will just become a daily part of their home and their work lives. Automation, we see in the rollout of artificial intelligence in lots of things, from movie recommendations to decision making around loans. The combination of artificial intelligence plus low-cost automation tools, which are already rapidly rolling out in companies, plus natural language processing in things like chatbots, will really, over the coming 5 years, lead to a wave of hyperautomation, where we see automation and artificial intelligence applied through a broad range of areas at work and at home. And last but not least, biometrics, where today we already see biometrics in play through smart cameras and other things in our home, through Ring security, as well as through other security offerings. But we'll increasingly, there's already a movement toward multi-biometric identification, bringing together facial recognition together with iris recognition, as well as behavioral recognition, to make sure that that when you're accessing something, there's confidence that you are who you say you are. You know, Bill Gates, a number of years ago, said something that has probably never been more true than as it is today, which is that we always overestimate the change that's going to occur in the next 2 years, but we have a tendency to significantly underestimate the change that's going to happen in the next 10. And so for that reason, let's look ahead to what the next 10 years could be. What could these trends, these 8 interconnected technology trends that we talked about, what could they look like in the year 2030 through the eyes of Ben, a 25-year-old product manager? March 19th, 2030 at 7:30 in the morning. Good morning, Ben. The weather outside is 57 degrees and sunny. I've got your calendar and the day's top headlines ready when you are. You know, Ben created this digital assistant himself, and even though no matter how many times he hears this first thing in the morning, mornings are not Ben's favorite time of the day. Especially since he was just having a dream where somebody was asking him something, and he can't remember what the question was, and it's bothering him. But at any rate, he's now awake. His digital assistant, in the meantime, has already turned on the lights in the bathroom and has transferred his calendar and the day's top headlines to the smart display in the bathroom. So he washes up, throws on some clothes, and heads to the kitchen, where he goes to a smart refrigerator and checks what's for breakfast this morning. And then he also goes ahead and looks at the recommendations for what it's making for dinner and for breakfast tomorrow. And he goes ahead and makes the order. And the smart refrigerator goes ahead and places the order to a local food delivery service they subscribe to. So Ben takes out breakfast, he starts eating. Automatically, his favorite playlist starts playing through his smart speaker as he's reading the headlines on his smartwatch. As he finishes up breakfast and is heading out the door, his apartment, through his digital assistant, automatically turns off the lights, locks the door, and lowers the temperature as he heads out the door. Down in front of his apartment, a self-driving electric car has already pulled up and is ready to take him to the office at his usual time. As he enters into the car, his His smartwatch, his digital assistant, automatically transfers to the smart display, automatically transfers first his music playlist to the car, picking up right from where he left off when he was in his apartment. And then as he gets into the car, the smart display on the car's dashboard brings up exactly where he left off and looking at his calendar and the day's top headlines right in a seamless way. You know, Ben's parents keep telling him, look, you need to get a driver's license. You're 25 years old. But he really doesn't see the need for this. All of the new cars that are out in 2030 are electric and self-driving, and there still are some old school gas-powered autos on the road, but everybody knows that their days are numbered. The car takes Ben on his normal route to the office, and when he gets to the office, artificial intelligence-enabled security cameras recognize him and unlock the glass door entrance to his office. Now, if he were coming during after hours, sometimes he would be prompted to do an iris scan just to check that it really is Ben that's entering. But in this case, he doesn't need to. It's just his normal time of arrival in the office. And having entered into the office, the smart sensors in the door automatically turn on his laptop so that he's ready to go when he sits down. So at his laptop, his cloud-enabled personal dashboard has already been brought up. And Ben sees that prior to his arrival in the office, his digital assistants have been hard at work, doing things like prioritizing his chat and email messages, sending updates to his team members on the status of things that he needs to deliver. But most importantly, and what's great for Ben, is his digital assistants have been sifting through the data and insights and analytics around his customer base for his product and has brought up a summarized version of what's going on with his product so he can focus on the most important details. These digital assistants are easy for anybody to build. And you don't have to be a professional developer to build them. By using low-code automation software that's powered by artificial intelligence, anybody can do these. Anybody can create these. In fact, Ben created a number of these digital assistants himself before he came to the company, and they were part of his resume, and part of what actually helped him get the job, because he was able to demonstrate how he would be so much more efficient and productive with the digital assistants that he built. Now, Ben's company provides a blockchain platform for financial services. And so for a monthly subscription, both consumers and small to mid-sized businesses can get access to lower cost banking services. So for consumers, this includes the ability to crowdsource and customize short to long-term loans, anything from like a credit overdraft all the way through to a mortgage or a home refinancing, crowdsourced through individuals, businesses, or even other financial institutions, where the consumer can personalize the payment terms that they want. And for small to mid-sized businesses, the types of services that Ben's company provides is really just an expanded set on what's offered to consumers, enabling faster cross-border payments in terms of trade finance through smart contracts, or being able to offer insurance that's tied to sensors that track individual shipments across borders for businesses. Ben's company is growing like crazy, and the banks themselves that they're competing against see what's going on. Increasingly, the banks are focusing on providing strategic advice for small to mid-sized businesses and personalized service for consumers, and then they're looking to automate all of the rest and focus on providing personalized, customized experiences to their customer base. Well, Ben's got to get going because he owes the chief product officer an update on the status of his product. But in the back of his mind, he's still bothered by whatever that question was that was being asked to him at the end of his dream last night. He still can't get it out of his head. But there's more. But he's got to get going, so we'll let him get going on getting the update to his chief product officer. So at the end of the day, about 5:15, Ben steps outside of the office and he puts his smart glasses on. He's going to go meet up with some friends of his at a nearby retail shop. It's a new shop that's opened up for outdoor equipment. And he puts on his smart glasses. As he does, walking directions to the retail shop pop up on the inside of his glasses and direct him to where the shop is. He also, through his glasses, can listen to his soundtrack, his music. He can look at a text thread with his friends. He can call his friends. And Ben just loves these smart glasses. They're awesome. You know, the other week at the beach, when he was just lying on the sand, he downloaded a movie to his smart glasses, to his shaded, and the shades came on. And he was able to watch the movie through the inside of his smart glasses. He just loves these things. So he walks over to the outdoor retail shop, and he steps in, and he goes to the designated room where the meetup is happening. And compared to say 5 to 10 years ago, retail shops, just like bank branches, are totally different. They really now are focused on providing experiences, providing a curated set of products, providing, they almost look more like a coffee shop than anything else, providing free food and drinks, an opportunity to meet new people, and of course staff that, when you walk in the door, automatically know who you are through the digital public profile that you present to the retail shop, and can provide personalized service to you. So it's a totally different experience than what it was, say, 5 to 10 years ago. And so anyway, Ben sits down. He goes to the designated room at the retail shop, and he meets his friends and a number of other folks that he hasn't met before. Now his smart glasses have adjusted to the indoors, and what's great about his smart glasses are that they're able to pick up the digital public profiles of people around the table that are willing to share their public profiles. So on the inside of his glasses, he can see information about each of the people around the table. What's great about this is Ben has a tendency, like myself, to forget people's names. And so this is a great way for him to be able to just readily make connections with people. But what's also great about digital public profiles is that each person is able to control what information they share with others around the table. So after they get acquainted, a member of the retail staff comes up and starts demoing some of the latest outdoor equipment. Ben really likes the smart ski jacket that's being showed. What's cool about it is it not only includes a flexible screen on the arm where he can view, say, a ski map or other information, but it also has embedded sensors throughout the jacket. So these embedded sensors, if he were to get into a fall, would be able to detect, his heart rate and other biomarkers around his health, and then automatically signal for help if needed. This is really pretty handy for Ben because he does a lot of backcountry skiing. And so he really likes that, and so he decides, I'm going to go ahead and purchase this. He transfers his at the end of the demo session. He transfers his digital public profile to the retail person, and it has the size of his jacket size and other information, and then it's automatically ordered online for delivery to his home. The retailers love it when you share your digital public profile because it gives them information about who's in the store with them, and as a result, the retailer gives discounts and other incentives for their consumers to do this. So he's gone ahead and ordered this jacket, and as he's on his way out the retail shop, he realizes that he needs some new ski boot laces. So he goes ahead and picks up those ski boot laces, and then he just walks out the door, and his account is automatically charged through the smart glasses that he's wearing. There's no need for going to a cashier. So back home, back at his apartment, Ben picks up the dinner delivery box that's arrived at his store. At his door, he touches the handle to his apartment. The door auto unlocks, and because his apartment through his smartwatch has detected his presence, the lights have come on, and the 80-inch thin panel display in the living room has come on, bringing up Ben's personal dashboard. The very first thing that Ben sees on his personal dashboard is an update from his artificial intelligence-enabled medical service. This medical service, which his mom signed him up for, uses information that's captured on the back of his smartwatch through a smart sensor, which captures information from his skin around different biomarkers like glucose levels, sodium, potassium, calories consumed. And that information, combined with other information around heart rate, body temperature, and so forth, is fed on a continuous basis to this AI medical service, which in turn can provide like an overview of his daily health. Think about it essentially as almost like an everyday physical, and provide recommendations on what he should do in terms of eating and exercise and other ways to stay healthy. He can also, through this medical service, order prescriptions without talking to a doctor, but he can also choose to talk with a doctor as well. But it's all enabled through artificial intelligence. In this case, again, Ben's mother got him this service, but Ben knows that he's healthy, so he typically only looks at this once a week. So instead of focusing on the update from his medical service, he decides to take a look at his ad-supported streaming service. He's been interested in binge watching a new TV program. In the past, Ben used to, like all of us, skip over commercials, through DVR, just because who wants to watch commercials that aren't targeted to you? But actually, in the year 2030, commercials are hyper-targeted to you and hyper-relevant. So when Ben actually likes watching the commercials. In this case, when he turns on his ad-supported streaming service, he sees a pretty cool video about the smart jacket that he just purchased from the retail shop, and a demo of it in action. And through that demo, he sees that he could buy a flat panel camera that would attach to the jacket. He thinks that's pretty cool, so he goes ahead and then through the TV screen, he adds the smart camera to his order, and that's automatically captured, and it'll be on its way shortly to him. So with that ordered, Ben decides to all right, continue binge watching this new TV series. It's a drama set in 2040. It's about a 15-year-old math genius teenager. And this teenager likes spending more time in a virtual world through his that's presented through his smart contact lenses overlaid on the real world. And this teenager is, typical sort of teenager stuff, is trying to sort of figure out who he is and what he wants. And the episode opens with a white screen and with an artificial intelligence voice asking our protagonist, Koenig, "Hello, Koenig, what is it that you want?" But then Ben has this realization, that's it. That was the question that he heard at the end of his dream last night that he couldn't remember. And what is it that he wants? And as he looks back over the past weeks and months of his routine of going to and from the office and what he's been doing at home and engaging with his friends, he feels like there's something more that he wants. He wants to make his mark. And he's been thinking about this idea for a startup. And he realizes as he's sitting on the sofa, well, if I don't start working on this now, well, when am I going to start working on it? So he shuts off the main display. He pulls over his laptop and opens up a document. And the cursor blinks back at him as he starts getting down his ideas for this startup, getting these first ideas down for ideas that have long been percolating but have been way overdue for an audience. So that's what we just talked about, is one picture of how these 8 interconnected technology trends could play out in the year 2030. It's just one version of many possible futures of how these trends could manifest themselves. But even in 2030 and beyond, as these trends evolve, even when we way have evolved beyond what we thought was possible, we're going to, as people always ask, and as product managers especially, we're always going to ask, what now, and how can we make things better? How can we have an impact on the world? These 8 interconnected technology trends that we talked about will change our lives, but they're not going to fundamentally change who we are as humans and give us answers to the questions that we seek, which is, what is it that we want, and what do we want to become? So as product managers, you're in a unique position because as product managers, you can make the future happen through the products and services that will take advantage of these 8 interconnected technology trends and other trends over the coming years. So how can you as product managers make the future happen? I'd leave you with 3 key thoughts that really would apply regardless of what sector you're in. The first is know your target customers inside and out. Regardless of whether it's a consumer or a business, know like who your customer is, what do they do on a day-to-day basis, what motivates them, what influences them, what frustrates them, what pain points do they have. Know them inside out so you can then think about, if you were that customer, what would be the breakthrough, what would be the next generation product that you would love to have. Customers aren't going to tell you what those breakthroughs are. But when you come up with concepts based on a depth understanding of a representative sample of your target customers, and you present those concepts in testing to your customers, they'll tell you what they like or they don't like. And by iterating with your customers, you can achieve the breakthroughs of tomorrow. Key thing is make the value irresistible. Whatever product you deliver, make sure that the product is easy to use, because if it's not easy to use, it won't be adopted. It provides fantastic cost to value, and it's better than anything that that customer has today. You ultimately want to make the value of the product so great, the value of your breakthrough so great, that customers just have to tell their friends and their colleagues about how great this product is. And the last thing is execution. Execution matters, and the details of all aspects of execution matter to make the value irresistible. Every aspect of your product, the end-to-end experience and the details of the step-by-step end-to-end experience, the functionality you deliver, the performance of the product, the technical performance of the product, how it's messaged and positioned and brought to market, and how it's supported from an operational perspective, makes or breaks the value you deliver. If you get all of these things right, people will talk about your products. But for every hiccup or every issue, it causes the customer to question, well, is this really the product of tomorrow? You'll know, and getting the details right is really the difference. Executing on all 3 of these things, and then lastly getting the details right, is really the difference from having just another product that's out there, where many products fail, versus a product that truly can change the world and makes the future happen. So I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. I'd invite you to follow my article series. I've written an article about what the world could look like in 2030 based on these technology trends. But I'm going to continue this article series for each decade through 2070. So I invite you to follow me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/BA Foley. And my final thought is, at Automation Anywhere, we like to say, go be great. And so what I'd say to you as product managers is, go be great in making the future happen. Thank you.
You heard me talking about community a lot, because I think it's the fundamental piece for every business. In our case, none of this would be possible without all the support from the different speakers, instructors, community organizers, and team members who make this magic happen, not only online, but in different parts of the world. So that's why I wanted to quickly feature some of that information. We produce over 1,000 in-person events per year, in addition to hundreds of online events. All of those in-person events happen in more than 200 different cities around the world. And these are just some examples of pictures taken by our community organizers. I think this is a great opportunity to connect with local product leaders, to create those physical connections. And I hope you are either part of those events already, and if not, I invite you to participate. They are all free, and you can find the information on our website.
Hello all, I'm so excited to be delivering this talk to you today. I lead a global team, and I'm really glad to be able to provide product insights in a global fashion, as really this job can be done anywhere. To introduce myself, I'm Roshni. I'm the Vice President of Consumer Product at Eventbrite, the world's largest ticketing platform. As a product leader, I'm really passionate about driving product strategy and leading teams at growth stage consumer and B2B companies. And I chose this topic for the talk today because I see it as the intersection of the two. Okay, but really, why talk about OKRs? How important is that to product really? I'll go one step further here and say that in some sense, it's not even that important. The OKR isn't even the thing here. There are lots of frameworks and acronyms available that would be just as good. SMART goals, BHAGs, OKRs. Whatever system of preference you use, however, OKRs are a powerful leadership tool for product managers and product leaders who want to have high-performance teams. When done well, OKRs help drive team alignment, focus, problem solving, and ultimately impact for users and the business. And that's why it's important to understand how to use them and use them well. So what is an OKR? An OKR is comprised of two parts. It is an objective, or the goal that your business or product team wants to achieve, and the measurements or key results that you'll use to track your progress and see if you've made progress towards this goal. An example for Khan Academy might be an objective to become the leading K-12 educational website. And KRs there might be around how many courses they've launched or what the breadth of content that they've covered actually is. There's many nuances to OKRs, and you can go really deep here. And if you're interested in doing that, I'd recommend the excellent book called Radical Focus by Christina Wodke for a great deep dive. With the simple OKR framework, the magic comes in how you use them. And when applying these to product teams, there are some specific ways I've seen this go wrong, and lessons I've learned as a result that I'd like to share with you today. My first experience with OKRs was joining a new company and hearing about the company OKRs at the first all hands. And what they shared was basically something like this: be the best, make a ton of revenue, have humongous growth. Yes, technically this is a goal and you can measure it, but really these are more business KPIs, overall metrics that demonstrate the performance of the company and tell you nothing about how to get there or what important trade-offs to make along the way. Imagine you're a product team and you're given this OKR. Where would you begin? Your options are literally endless. This provides no other guidance to your team other than be good. How OKRs become powerful for product teams is when they embed the product strategy within them. The hard work needs to be done up front to really understand what you're trying to do with the product strategy at the high level. What's the approach the team needs to take to get to the next step? The OKRs should be specific enough
that they focus on the levers that the team should use to drive the product forward. When the goals are too far removed from the levers, you'll be able to tell, because teams will struggle to pick projects that can meaningfully move the number, or they'll prioritize and pick projects that don't seem to be the highest impact path forward. One example of this for us was we were really trying to grow user retention. And yes, that was an important product goal, but it was very nebulous. There could be thousands of ways into this, and we didn't have a great understanding of what could work. So when we had this big goal around retention, which is fairly generic, we found our teams really struggling in aligning together to actually make meaningful progress towards this. When we moved to something more specific, such as driving acquisition in a certain channel, with KRs around activity or outcome, this worked better. For example, we've had a focus on growing engagement with a specific feature. That has an important impact for the business. So our recent OKRs have been all around driving usage of this specific feature. Now, it's possible to go too far in this direction. If you specify exactly what the team needs to do, you leave no autonomy and don't really even need an OKR. At that point, you've just moved into a roadmap. You'll know when you've gone too far in this direction, away from outcome-oriented goals, if you're tempted to write an OKR that's just a project plan with KRs that are like ship feature X, ship feature Y. So really, the balance is to come in on a goal that moves the team in the right direction without specifying the exact way to get there. On to lesson 2. This is one that I've had to learn the hard way after trying it a few different times. The standard recommendation is that OKR targets should be set aggressively so that if you hit 70 to 80% of the goal, you will have made a big impact. The tricky part is in picking the right number. The mistake that I've made is that I want to encourage big swings and novel ideas and approaches from my team. So I've set a very ambitious goal, one that the team wouldn't be able to hit without dramatically changing how things are done today or thinking about brand new innovative ideas. However, in my experience, and speaking with other product leaders as well, I found that this doesn't work. Something about the size of the goal, something really big and audacious like acquire 2 million users, tends to move teams in the other direction. They become more conservative and are more likely to only pick the projects that they know will succeed, so that they can make some progress against this huge number, rather than completely shifting their thinking and moving to the next plane. So really what I was trying to get at was a behavior change around big swings. And at the end of the day, if that's the type of change that you need to make, I'd recommend that that's the KR worth setting. So it's important to keep the metric in the realm of possibility. Maybe 1 million or 800,000 would have been a more reasonable goal. But then couple that with a KR around the number of big swings the team needs to take. Maybe it's like ship 2 projects that have an X% impact. So they're expected to try to find those bigger ideas. Now it's possible to go too far in the other direction here as well, and setting a target that's too low and not really ambitious enough to actually move the business forward. You'll know when this happens, when you'll see that teams are hitting their OKRs and the metrics are moving in the right direction without you having actually shipped any meaningful product. You're just kind of coasting on the trend of the natural growth of the business. And so that's where forecasting, analysis, and really thinking through how you want the product to move the metrics becomes very important in setting the target. Another common way that OKRs are used and adapted is that usually a company chooses to use them. There's a big rollout and they say, we're using OKRs for performance now. And then, like flowers, they begin to bloom all over the place. There's company level OKRs, division level OKRs, country level OKRs, function ones, and squad level ones. You may even get down to personal OKRs as well. The idea is that all of these individual goals should ladder up and combine to help the company hit its overall goals. In practice, this is very difficult to do well. goals that apply to the whole company, by definition, will be so broad that an individual squad interpreting it and trying to find a way to move those top numbers may make optimizations or choose strategies that don't help move the company towards the goal in the best way. And you may have teams running off in 1,000 different directions instead of running together in the same way to move this number the most. So while it's difficult to influence whether or not the company is using OKRs at an organizational level, there are some things you can do within your teams or your area to help make this work better. What we've experimented with is, if you can take a product area or a business unit, depending how you're structured, that's the right level to set the OKRs. What this looks like is doing the hard work at this business unit or product theme level to come up with a really robust set of OKRs for the time period you're looking at. Then is the most important part, which is that you have to resist the urge to let individual squads set their own individual OKRs. What you need the squads to do is basically sign up for individual KRs or full objectives from this set of goals that you've set for this product area. What this allows is that the teams can actually work together and move in the same direction. There's less confusion, and you can even unlock a multiplier effect where teams can pick and choose projects that will help them hit multiple goals. So for example, if a business unit has a goal to acquire 5 million users through re-engagement channels, perhaps one team signs up for 2 million through email, another team signs up for 1 million through notifications, and so on. We've adopted this structure for our teams and found it really helps to align the squads together and for teams to see how all their work stacks up. It encourages us to take on projects with the multiplier effects. And lastly, it makes it much easier to communicate to the organization what the squads are working on and why this matters. Lesson 4. Another dimension to consider when setting goals is the time horizon. It's common to see OKRs set at the quarterly, half, or even full year level. The right timing for your team and their OKRs really depends on the size of the company, the maturity of the product strategy you're pursuing, and just the underlying change and growth of the company. In a small company where things are moving very rapidly, quarterly goals may make the most sense. The business context is changing so quickly and you're learning so many new things that you couldn't possibly plan for a full half. Somewhere where you're working on tried and true strategies, say around SEO or scaling features that have already found product market fit, timing at the half level might be more appropriate. The challenge here is in balancing useful goals with lightweight process for creating and developing OKRs. A quarter can go by quickly, and without the right processes in place, I've found teams scrambling to create OKRs for the whole first month of the quarter, land on their strategy, start moving on it, and then have to start the process all over again for the next quarter. One happy medium that I've seen that may work well in your circumstance is to keep the OKRs at the half level, but pick the KR values to be at the quarter level. Then, based on what you learn about your ability to influence this number, you can update the target as you move into the next quarter. Finally, I found that keeping OKRs to the rule of 3 at most is the way to go. When I say rule of 3, I mean at most 3 objectives and at most 3 KRs for each of those objectives. And that would still be at the BU level. At a team level, I'd argue that you shouldn't go beyond 1 or at the most 2 objectives. There is always a temptation to find a way to include OKRs to justify every project the team wants to take on, or account for all the other things that they'll be responsible for. Resist this urge as much as possible. The OKR should help provide focus on what's most important. It doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't do other things. As a product leader, it's important to keep investing in product quality and technical debt. But it does mean that the OKRs should provide focus on the direction you should take the team. Exploding past this 3 makes the OKRs not a tool of focus, but a list of things to do. And it makes it very difficult for teams to understand and prioritize what's most important. If you've made it this far and you've created OKRs that check all of these boxes, you're well on your way to having a focused and aligned team that's problem solving and prioritizing to deliver the most impact for your users and your business. I hope these lessons I've learned along the way are helpful for you as you continue on your product journey. Thank you so much for your time today.
Question. Just before we move on to the next speaker, I just want to know, what is the single most valuable lesson you've learned today so far? Put it in the comments and we'll make sure to reshare some of the best answers on our social media channels.
Hello, Product School peeps. I'm excited to be here for the very first virtual product summit. My name is Gibson Biddle, and I'm here to talk about branding for builders. I want to start with a bit of a pop quiz. I have in my pocket hundreds of $50 gift certificates for 2 different companies, and I'd love to know which of the 2 that you would enjoy. So the first is for Uber. And the second is for Deer Lift. So I'd like you to choose between those 2. I've been asking this question for years now. 4 years ago, about 90% of the audience would choose the Uber gift certificate, and 10% would choose the Lyft. And most of the time now, more than half of the folks will select the Uber gift certificate. And that's not because of degradation in the service at Uber. It's largely because of a series of PR gaffes, things that were wrong, that caused people to no longer trust Uber. And that's to give you a sense of how important this notion of a brand is. In my family, I have a 21-year-old daughter and a 23-year-old daughter. They both uninstalled Uber. My wife did the same. And this gives you a sense of how important a brand can be to creating that trust. And this is one of the answers for why people who are building products, you, product leaders, should care about this notion of a brand. But there's some other reasons as well. As a product leader, the way I simply define the job, your job is to delight customers in these hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways, where margin enhancing is just a simple way of saying to make money. And there's just a few ideas that help product leaders to do this. Economy of scale. I was at Netflix for many years. The company's big, and because it's so big, it can afford $13 billion in building original content. It's got a network effect where every device in the world is magically ready to stream to your television. And it's got wonderfully unique technology in their personalization. They understand the member taste of 157 million people worldwide. But the big dog I want to talk about here is the brand. You trust the Netflix brand. Every month, it's magically pinging your credit card for $13, $14, or $15. And that brand is the hard-to-copy thing that you can nurture and build over time. That's really what I'm talking about today. The other thing that comes up for product leaders is I'm in product development. I'm in technology. Why should I care about marketing? That's someone else's job. And I want to give you a sense through my failure of why it's so important to engage in these ideas of packaging, of positioning, of marketing. So this is Sesame Street, Counting Cafe on the Sega Genesis. And I'm confident that none of you have played it because I spent $300,000 building the product and exactly 300 people bought it, which is a phenomenal failure. Failed to make it clear why you should buy it, built the wrong product for the wrong platform. So spin forward to 1997, this was one of my first hits. This is Sesame Street, Elmo's Preschool. And this was the #1 title in 1997. Adorable Elmo would help your 3, 4, and 5-year-old children, probably you, for many in the audience, to learn everything that you need to know in a preschool curriculum. A substantially better job at packaging and positioning the product to deliver a hit. When I'm interviewing product managers, these are the 7 skills that I look for. And you'll notice that one of them are marketing skills. I'm nicely quizzing product leaders' their ability to package and position these ideas in ways that are appealing and relevant to their customers. At this point, I've probably interviewed 500 different product managers. This gives you the sense of the skills I'm looking for, but I'm always evaluating their marketing skills in this context. So my name, as I said before, is Gibson Biddle. I want to give you a sense of my career. You'll see that I go back and forth between building bang bang shoot 'em up games at Electronic Arts and building kids software at the learning company Mattel. For many of you out there, it usually gives people a kick to know that I worked on Oregon Trails. That's how old I am. At 2005, I joined Netflix as the VP of Product and then went on in 2010 to Chegg, which is a textbook rental company. So this gives you a sense of my background. This Branding for Builders talk is really, there's 3 chapters to it. The first, I'm going to explore the simple question, what's a brand? And then the next, in chapter 2, I'm going to explore 2 different branding models. The first is a simple positioning model, and the second is something I call the brand pyramid. And then in the 3rd chapter of this journey, I'm going to share how all these ideas played out over 20-odd years at Netflix. So to dive into chapter 1, what's a brand? And like many of my explorations today, I start with Dear Google. And in this case, when I asked Google to define brand, they gave me a stinky answer. They talked about an identifying mark burned on livestock. And this is one of those rare cases where I gave the Google an F. So I continued on in my journey to understand what this concept of brand means. I bumped into this idea all the time. Don't worry about the brand, just build a great product. And it's true, if you build a great product, you can also build a great brand, but it's also helpful to be more thoughtful about the brand. And I'll explain some of this later. I found a wonderful and juicy quote by Howard Schultz. This is a well-known brand, Starbucks. The most powerful brands are built from the heart. Their foundations are stronger because they are built with the strength of the human spirit. Some very abstract, lofty ideas at work. And again, wasn't as helpful as I was hoping. And then I found Laura Bush, who had a relatively cogent way to think about this. Brand is the unique story that consumers recall when they think of you. And that was super helpful to me in my thinking. So here is my definition of a brand. A brand is the story that builds a trusted relationship between a customer and product. The brand, this concept includes positioning, the benefit, personality, and then gets into those concepts of aspiration and emotion. So I'm going to give you these 2 different brand models. The first is a very simple one. It explores those first 3 things. It is to help you to understand what positioning is all about. And all of you are experts in positioning. I know this. And so I'm going to help you to understand what it really means. So the first, you have to think about the word position refers to a specific position in a place. And that place is in a consumer's mind. So this notion of positioning, it means the place a brand occupies in a consumer's mind. And you're all experts in positioning. I know this, and I'm going to prove it to you in a moment. So in a moment, I'm going to yell out one car brand, and I want you to you can yell back the one word that pops into your head. So I'm about to say the car brand, it's Volvo. And I'm guessing that almost all of you had the one word safety pop into your head. And this shows you how carefully Volvo has positioned themselves as the safety car. And they've got hundreds of airbags throughout the car. And I could play this same exercise for a number of other car brands. And they're all working hard to position them in your head with these certain ideas. It's remarkable to me that Tesla, in its 15 years, has been able to achieve this position where it's the innovative car compared to companies that have been around 100 years. This is the notion of positioning. So here's the simple positioning model. With your product or service or your company, you're trying to answer 3 simple questions. The first, what is it? And my coaching is to be highly descriptive, talk using 6th grade language that my 83-year-old dad will understand. And then be clear about the benefits to your customer. How will it improve their lives? And then the third is a little abstract, but this makes your product relatable. And the question is, what is your product or service's personality? And the way to think about this, if we met your product at a party, how would folks describe you? And this is the way at getting at a personality. So what I'm going to do is share with you how we thought about the positioning of Netflix. What is it? It is a TV and movie subscription service. And how does it benefit our customers? It is wonderfully fast, it's easy, and it's entertaining. And it's also providing an incredible value. Lots of movies to watch for $13 or $14 or $15 a month. In the way that we were hoping you would think about the brand, if you thought about as a person, you would think that the company, the product, the service was both straightforward and friendly. These are the ways that we defined the product that we were trying to build over time. And I'm hoping that you believe most of these things are true. And I'm hoping Netflix hasn't lost your trust the way dear Uber did over many of its years. So this is that first positioning model. And I encourage you to think about your product, your service, your company using these tools. The second model is, I call it the brand pyramid model. So we've described what your product is. We've described its benefits and its personality. And now we're going to go 2 layers deeper. We're going to talk about aspiration and emotion, those touchy-feely things that Howard Schultz from Starbucks talked about. So you do aspiration to help you remember that you're trying to build a product that will dent the universe 10, 20, 30 years from now. And the confusing element is emotion. Why would brands get into this notion of emotion? I'll let you think about that. Ah! Now, with a live audience, that is a scary thing for folks. The reason I've done it is to create an emotional response. And the reason that I want an emotional response is that's what causes people to remember me. So this is this wonderful quote from Maya Angelou, the writer. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I'm guessing you've experienced a little of this. I hope you've recovered. Sorry for that. Sorry to the editor especially. Okay, so the second model, this is the way it works. It's a brand pyramid. And the pyramid starts at the base with a foundation. And it starts with, I call these the product attributes. These are the bits and bytes of what you do. You can think of these as features as well. So these are the features in your product that deliver the benefit. And now we repeat the product benefits, the things that help to improve your customers' lives. But now we ratchet up into the world of emotion. And these are the emotional benefits. These are how you intend to make the customer feel so that they will remember you. And then the ratchet up further, if you're trying to build a product and a brand that will dent the universe, there's something bigger at work. And this is really trying to answer the question, how you will dent the universe. And this is about the aspiration, which is super important. So I'm going to share this in the context of a brand that most people know, and I'm also assuming most people love it. This is a photo that's taken 2 hours before The Apple Developer Conference happened in 2016. These are people waiting for the doors to open. So think about the relationship that they have with that product and brand. Most folks will remember the first ad that Apple did. This is from 1984, where this woman throws the hammer at the man to topple the powers that be, if you will. Incredibly memorable. And this is, of course, one of the early products, this simple, elegant, human-centered design. And this is a wonderful example of how Apple positioned itself against IBM. Which of these two characters do you want to be? And here's an ad. Notice there's no product, there's no brand, there's no nothing, but a person that's clearly in their own private Idaho as they sing and dance their way down the street. Think about how Apple wants you to feel as you look at this image. And then they brought in famous celebrities. This is Pablo Picasso. Why did they choose him as a foundation for their Think Different campaign? And look at the other folks that they chose. What's special about all of these people? And it gives you a clue about how Apple thinks about their brand. And then brands are about how you want to be perceived. In this case, you can see this person's logo. You can tell that they're an Apple person. They're not an Android person. This is what makes brands special. And I'm sure that some of you today have already gotten your Apple 11. And it's a sign of who you are. So now I'm going to share how Apple thinks about the brand using this pyramid. So you start at the bottom with these product attributes. They're pretty simple today. They have mobile digital products and services. In the old days, they had printers and PCs, etc. And the benefits that they're hoping to deliver, highly creative, highly productive, and easy because of that human-centered design. And then how do they want you to feel? That person dancing on the streets, they feel free, they feel highly imaginative. And then if you think about those characters that they made as part of the Think Different campaign, what the brand is trying to deliver is revolutionary innovation. These were all revolutionaries. And this is really how the Think Different campaign was constructed using this brand pyramid. So what's the value of a brand? I have an $1,800 MacBook Pro. I betcha I could have bought the same from Dell for $900. And this is the real value and power of a brand. So for Dear Netflix, the way that we thought about it at the bottom, the attributes, today, it's about TV and movie streaming. And it's also about its original content. 10 years ago, it was about DVDs by mail. The attributes change, but the benefits are the same. So it's all about those same benefits. It's fast, it's easy, it's entertaining, it delivers a great value. And how did we want you to feel? We wanted you to be delighted. In the early days, we were competing against Blockbuster, which was the opposite of delight. You'd go into a store, you'd spend 10 or 15 minutes trying to find a DVD. You had to wait in line to pay for it. You'd go home, discover that nobody wanted to watch the movie, and worse, you forgot to return it, so you had to pay a $40 late fee. This was exactly the opposite. We were competing on delight. And the something bigger that we were trying to provide was this escape from reality. Think for a moment about the first time you went to a movie theater in the summer, a big blockbuster, and you were transported to different universes. These were the hallmarks of the brand that we were trying to create. Now in this case, we didn't do a fancy ad campaign. Everybody on the product team understood at the end of the day we were trying to build a product where movie enjoyment was made easy. I joke that Neve Savage, my brand partner, would tattoo that to my forehead to nicely remind me about the product that we were trying to build. And it was amazing, the partnership between the product team and between the product and the brand team. So here is that brand pyramid. I'd encourage you with your product, your service, your company to go through the exercise and name each of these steps so you too can be in lockstep with your marketing partners. So I've been trying to give you a sense of the power of a brand, and I think brands are incredibly powerful. So in the case of Dear Apple, when you choose an Apple product, what's going on is you're engaging in revolutionary innovation, and the brand is a reflection of how you see yourself. Defining the brand provides the product team with tools needed to create a consistent experience as the company grows. It's the job of folks in marketing to give definition to it, and it's your job in product to actually build something that delivers against that. And then the third is this amazing teamwork that brand and product can delight customers in these hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. And this is the real power of a brand for me. So now I'm going to take you on to chapter 3, and I'm just going to share with you about how the Netflix brand evolved over time. So a couple things about Netflix. At Netflix, it's all about consumer science. The non-member site, that's the place, it's a page where people come to it and they can click the button to enjoy, today it's a 30-day free trial. And this is where the product is effectively packaged and positioned, and the job is to inspire you to start your free trial. Every 2 weeks, for every year of Netflix's life, they have been experimenting in focus groups, different ways to present the product and brand, and an A/B test. Every 2 weeks, there'd be 4 different front doors of the site that were being tested against each other. And this is really the beauty of consumer science. And Netflix is obsessed. I hope you can understand that the product gets better and better and better, and people are trying to understand how the service can get better for you. And I'm hoping in this journey you'll see that over time, the brand takes on more meaning and more value. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning. And my theory here is all startups suck at the beginning, but this is where Netflix began. And it did suck. There were about 2,600 titles available. For $4, you could get a disc, and it would magically show up in the mail 5 days later. It really did suck, okay? And if there's designers out there, I think you'd say, yeah, that sucks. All right, so now roll forward to 2003. Things are looking a little bit better. Now imagine every step of the way, ideas are being A/B tested, and this was the design that week that won. So now you go forward to 2004, things are a little simpler, and now you see a happy couple on a couch. That's what brings people, you can begin to get some sense of the delight and the emotion at work. And in 2006, there's a happy family on a couch. And then 2007, that's the year that Netflix launched. We called it Watch Instantly. January of 2007 with 300 stinky titles that you could watch on your PC. I think this is probably Dragonheart. Now things get more complicated because we are struggling to define a survey that's about DVDs by mail, as well as the ability to stream a small category of movies, really to your PC and maybe a couple other devices. And you can see that it's getting complicated. How do you package and position these ideas in ways that resonate? And now if you look here at the very bottom, you'll notice it's all about the DVDs with a little bit of pepper and salt about the streaming. And there's the happy family on the couch. And by 2010, now you can see it's flipped. They lead with the streaming, and the DVD is becoming a little bit of an afterthought. And by 2011, finally, it's beginning to look a little bit simpler. The packaging and the positioning is clearer. It's about a streaming service that you can begin to watch kind of, sort of, anytime, anywhere. In 2012, that continues. It's finally beginning to get to be a simple, well-lit place. And by 2015, it is wonderfully simple. Now recognize, along the way, Netflix was always testing simple against complex. And the odd thing was complex was always winning. And that was because when you put more stuff on a page, it communicates more value. But by around 2015, all the meaning was beginning to come from the brand. It was enough just to say, this is Netflix, and all that value was communicated with the Netflix brand. So look, as it goes forward, it gets even simpler. You just have to say, Netflix, see what's next, watch anywhere, cancel anytime. And that's really what it looks like today. It's a simple, clean, well-lit place, and the brand is communicating all that value. And this is a winning A/B test, if you will, from today. So it's really exciting to see that journey of having to experiment as the product got different, as streaming was mixed in with DVDs, and finally it was all streaming, and finally you could stream anywhere, and then original content's coming into play, and all of these things are being tested on the front door of the site, and really remarkable to watch. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, he's an engineer by trade, but he understood the value of a brand. He said, someday our brand will be so big, our heads will swell. So he understood the real value in that. So we were excited when we saw this Virgin America plane that was talking about House of Cards and the fact that you could stream on the plane. Think about how exciting that would be from a punk startup that has finally grown up. And this was a favorite moment for me. It's Halloween, it's in Burlingame, and this dude knocks on the door. He's got the red Netflix shirt, and he's got a bag of ice. And I'm like, who the heck are you? And he said, I'm Netflix and chill, dude. Of course, I had to go look it up on Google to find out what the heck it means, but I understand. And you could see that the brand was taking on real meaning. This wasn't anything done by Netflix, but you can tell there's millions of people that love Netflix for different reasons. All right, so I'm bringing it home. Here's what I'm hoping you'll do with this data, this information. The key thing is that you will work to define your positioning and your brand. You'll evaluate the ideas about how to package and position your site in qualitative and focus groups, and then you'll start to A/B test them, the front door of your site. I'm hoping that you, like Netflix, will A/B test your homepage forever. This is one of the best places that Netflix was able to understand what really resonates with customers and what doesn't. And then I'm hoping that your brand and marketing partners will be clear in the positioning and the brand about what the product wants to be when it grows up. And I am hoping that you're going to experiment like crazy to build a better and better and better product that matches that vision. That's what I am hoping for you. Because today, brands are not the preserve of a marketing department. Brands are too important to be left to marketing or to any other department. Organizational ghettos do not create vibrant, world-changing brands. That's what I'd really love for you to take home today. And with that, I say thank you. Now, there is just one more thing. I'm a total consumer science person. I would love it if you could give me a little bit of help. So this is the moment. I'm like a street performer breathing fire. The crowds are around. You're all watching intently. And then the street performer always makes that mistake. They pass the hat asking for money, and everyone leaves. I'm not asking for money. I'd love, 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 love your feedback. So take out your phone and hold it up to the screen. And here's a QR code. You don't need a QR code reader. Just pull out the phone as though you're going to take a picture. Use the camera app. Don't click on it. And a Net Promoter Score survey from SurveyMonkey will magically pop up. 0 sucks, 10 is great. Pick any number you want in between. And I'd love it if you could tell me one thing that was good about this presentation and one thing that would be better. This is my 320th survey, so I've been learning a lot, and this is how I learn. If you're a couple of Android flavors like Lollipop or what happened, if it won't work, just go to www.gibsonbiddle.com. The SurveyMonkey link's sitting at the top. There's also a PDF of the presentation that I've shared. And I also wrote an article called Branding for Builders. That's on Medium. And it'll help present all of the information I've shared with you today. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. It's been great fun to be part of Product School's very first virtual product summit. And I hope that you're enjoying being part of it today as well. Thanks so much.
It's been incredible. Thank you to all the speakers for making Virtual Product Summit 2020 a reality. None of this would be possible without you. And also thank you for your generous contribution to the Product School community in general throughout the years. I also want to thank all the sponsors: Pendo, mParticle, Heap, Mixpanel, Waymo, Miro, Optimizely, Crisp, DocYard, Imagineer, Segment, User Guiding, Amplitude, FullStory, Slido, and Mural. Last but not least, I want to thank you for being part of the journey. Hope you enjoyed this day full of inspirational talks and learnings from incredible product leaders. I have a final gift for you. So we recorded all the talks and we'll be sending them to you as soon as we edit them. I will also be sending you all the presentations. And by the way, if you want to continue learning more about product management, feel free to check out productschool.com. Our online campus is open and we're constantly publishing online events and online training. So, hope to see you soon.